Hey guys, so we got a couple of you here. How we doing? Don't be shy. Who's here? Who's going to say hello? Who's going to be the first one? Hey, Paula. Silver Charm is here. Shabab, Father Sean, how are you? Joe Mannix. Hey, Joe. Good to see you. Okay, we're starting to build a little bit. I'm going to give it just a minute or two to let us aggregate a little bit, and then we'll get into it. Debbie is Silver Charm. I'm sorry, Debbie. Hey, Ernie. How you doing? Daniel, how are you? Good to see you. Now, before you ask me about this weekend's racing, I did not play anything this weekend. I just decided to take a little break. I started working on Royal Ascot, and we've got our first post for that for day one, and we'll be running them out for the rest of the week. And you like the new? Do you guys like the new AI that I've been using? Still kidding. Good. Good to know. Me too. I'm barely kicking. I had a tough one last night, but uh, it's probably best that you didn't play because it wasn't a good weekend. Okay. I have my racehorse filly running at Santa Anita in the next race. She might be up against it, but hope she can do well in the Santa Anita lawn. Okay. I will see your American fair and raise you a Puerto Rico. Okay. Okay. And just to show you, Daniel obviously has seen my Royal Ascot video. I think day one, if you haven't played Royal Ascot, I'll say it again. You really, hey Laura, how you doing? You're really missing out. It's a lot of fun. If you have the mornings available like I do, and you can watch them, you have your morning coffee, play the ponies, and it's just a spectacle. And the thing is, because the fields are usually pretty big, I mean, you got a lot of prices. And the first day, the King Charles alone is just wide open. And the Coventry Stakes probably is too. There's always a ton of 2-year-olds. The 2-year-old races are good because you get to see who runs in the Breeders' Cup. So if you can play them, I highly recommend it. Joe, I haven't looked at the Ohio Derby yet. I have the card. I will start working on it. And RoboCop is here. Always the oh boy, Robert. I want to make sure I get that right. Hi, Robert. All caps. I have not looked at the affirmed stakes, Robert. I was just telling these guys I didn't play anything this weekend. Um, I caught up on a lot of stuff I had put aside for the Triple Crown and Royal Ascot. I'm working on right now. We're gonna have full coverage of the Thistledown card for the Ohio Derby. I promise you that. But no, I don't know anything about the affirmed stakes. I would say this: litmus test to me is, maybe back at Santa Anita, he would have a better shot. In my opinion, he has not. He's just been. It just hasn't been much. Maybe time. You always have to remember this time of year. This is when the 3-year-olds start filling out. They put on muscle. Some of them, the late bloomers, start improving. That's the best insight I can give you, Robert. I don't have more than that about about the affirmed. I'm sorry. Well, listen, let me just say tonight is about handicapping and how to handicap. This is going to be a tutorial on, I'm going to give you some insights as to how I handicap a race. We're going to be looking at today's Churchill Downs card. Some of you have played it. I did not. I haven't seen these races. To me, it's not, I can show you races where I won and be like, hey, look, the angle works, but it's more important to me to just give you some insights as to how to handicap races. And secure survey. Yeah, I like Decisive. That horse I really wanted in the one that Trendsetter won, the Lexington, I think it was. I was all over him for that race. So if he has maintained his form, he might be dangerous. That's all I can give you from the affirmed. But so what we're going to do, the first thing I want to do is just give you some general notes and things that you have heard before from me, but I think are going to make a lot of sense to you. There's one concept that if you can remember this for handicapping any race, it's going to immediately improve your handicapping. There's one reason they run horse races. Only one. Now, you may say, well, it's to win races. No. Horse races are run to determine the value of the horses. If you can remember that when you handicap a race, it's going to make a lot of things are going to make sense to you. Because we talk about it all the time, during the Triple Crown, why do horses not run after the Triple Crown? Why do they get retired? The reason is simple. They've reached the height of their value. Horses are retired as soon as they reach the height of their value. Horses run at 4 after the 3-year-old year when they still have something to prove. Claiming races are run very specifically for one reason. That's the price of the horse. The horse is to be sold at 10,000, 20,000, whatever it is. It's a sale is what a claiming race is. As you look at your past performances, you have to get in the mindset of thinking about, why is this horse in the race? What are they trying to do? A lot of times you see horses, they move them up into a grade 1. Well, if he wins a grade 1, his value changes, doesn't it? He becomes more valuable. When a horse has had great success, there are some, there was as an example, some of you may remember there was a horse named Devil's Bag. And he ran in the early 80s, and Woody Stevens had him, and he had Swale, who won the Kentucky Derby. Devil's Bag was a very precocious 2-year-old. He was winning everything by a lot of lengths. Swale was winning, but not in the same impressive fashion. And Woody Stevens knew Swale was the better prospect. He had more two-turn pedigree. He was likely to be very good in the Triple Crown, whereas Devil's Bag didn't necessarily, while he was very good, he wasn't necessarily a 2-turn horse. So as they moved along from 2 to 3-year-olds, Devil's Bags kept winning, but he wasn't winning with the same authority. Why? A lot of the 3-year-olds caught up, grew, filled out, but also as the distances were getting longer, he wasn't as effective. Now, this is an unfortunate part of horse racing, but mysteriously, Devil's Bag, they said he had a chip in his knee, and they retired him. The real reason they likely retired him is he had reached the height of his value to become a stallion. If he kept running into races on the Triple Crown Trail where the distances were not going to be his friend, his value would decrease. That's always the goal in horse racing, is to run horses until they reach the height of their value and then to go to stud. If it's not, he's not going to be a stallion. Claiming races Horses run in the highest possible claiming race that they can be competitive at. And they're hoping that they'll be sold. That's what it is. And so my point is if you always remember why a horse is running in a particular race, and that the underlying principle is to get the horse to the height of his value. Now, when horses like Sierra Leone, for instance, now he didn't win the Kentucky Derby. If he had won a Triple Crown race, then he probably would have been retired after the Travers. He probably would have run in that, and that would have been it. Or maybe the Breeders' Cup Classic. But he didn't, right? So they brought him back at 4. Why? Because he had the potential to win a big race, and he won the Breeders' Cup Classic. And then he retired because now he's at the height of his value. So I hope that concept makes sense. Whenever you look at any race, now we've talked about, I had a question last week about trainer intent. That has a lot to do with it. Is where can I put this horse where he can win and he can maximize his value. So whenever you look at a race, that is something you want to think about. If a horse debuts in a maiden claimer, they've pretty much made up their mind already that this horse probably isn't going to go very far. So let's put him up for sale right now. If he's running in a maiden special weight, they're protecting him, right? Nobody can claim him. Nobody can buy him because they have hope that he's going to progress and move forward. I hope that makes sense. That's what I'm talking about. It's always the thing in the past you have to have in the back of your mind. And what it allows you to do, if you think that way, you can determine the prospects better of how a horse is going to do in a race. Now, you take somebody like Hitshow, for instance. He did pretty well as a 3-year-old. He finished 4th in the Derby, I think, and we were all over. A lot of people were all over him for the Belmont. He did pretty well, but he ultimately settled in to grade 3s because that was his level of class. That was where he could win races. Now, yes, I know he went to Dubai and he won there, but in a really lousy field. He comes back here. They've moved him to grade 1s. He's just not good enough. He's not a grade 1 horse, but he is a grade 3 horse and sometimes a grade 2. So that's where he runs. Now, the fact that that's his ceiling means as a stallion, he's kind of an okay prospect. But he wouldn't be one of the stellar ones because they're like, well, he's a grade 3 stakes horse. Grade 1 horses, whether they win a sprint or a route, obviously, get greater consideration. So if you think about that, every single horse you look at, that's what that little story they tell with their past performances. The ribbon you look through there, why is this horse in this race? Now, it becomes really obvious in a claiming race. Well, you know why he's there, right? They're trying to sell him. They're trying to sell him. He is up for sale in a claiming race. Another thing to that end, when you watch an optional claiming race and that horse is up for sale, they didn't protect him. Well, that should tell you a lot. That should tell you what the intent is. He's in this race, but we didn't protect him. So we're more than happy if somebody claims him and he's in that race because the purses tend to be a little better, And then there's the other thing is this, that with a claiming race, that this is a little interesting concept. Casa Carrillo La Historia, if anybody's wondering. A lot of times you see a horse drop in class in a claiming race. You drop from, let's say, a 30,000 down to a 10,000. And let's say he's won at the 30,000 level pretty consistently. And all of a sudden he's up for 10,000. that should be a red flag to you right away. Why did they drop him? That's like 2 or 3 classes. Why did they drop him that far? The chances are it's a fire sale. They want to get rid of him. Something in the training tells them that he's not what he used to be, and they figure he can win at the 10,000 level. So he gets claimed for 10,000. Then you add the winner's share onto it. It may add up to 30,000. I hope that makes sense. So a lot of times when you see these drops, that's what they're thinking. Okay, we get the win, even if they claim him, we still get what the horse is worth, and that's a way to judge how serious they might be about a claiming race. So I hope that makes sense. It's all about the price of the horse, the value they can get for the horse. The horses are all up for sale, even when they're protected, if you think about it in those terms. And Laura, yes, they do want to get through the conditions. The question is, and again, that's right to my point. Now, when a horse gets through his conditions, that's exactly what conditions are meant to do: increase their value. He won his maiden, he's worth a certain amount. N1X allowance, he wins that, passes that condition. Now he's worth a little more. Now he goes to an N2X, he wins that. Now he's worth a little more. Now he goes into an ungraded stakes race, wins that. Now he's worth a little more. Goes up in class, grade 3, wins that. Now he's worth even more, and so on and so on. So as they go up in class, the idea is to increase their value. A lot of times you will see, and I talked about this on the Derby Trail with, I'll use an example, Brad Cox. He has to serve his owners. All these big-time trainers have to serve their owners. All the trainers do. They get a pretty good idea when these are yearlings or 2-year-olds, what they're going to have. They know the sires. They know some of them, like gun runners, are going to get better as they get older. Some of them are going to get better when they stretch out in distance. And some are going to be limited. Now, Brad Cox, one of the things that I noticed that he does, and we'll go back a couple of years to Instant Coffee, if you remember him. On the 2-year-old trail, he was really the only one who's making any noise. And I think he won a couple of quote-unquote Derby preps at 2. But all the time, everybody was saying, is he really the best 2-year-old out there? And is he a Derby candidate? Not sure. Well, the reason why he was running in those races, and Brad Cox will do this with his JV 2-year-olds, is because, hey, he won a Derby prep. Technically, he won a graded stakes at 2 years old for 2-year-olds only. So when they want to make him a stallion, they can say, hey, he won this graded stakes, he won this graded stakes, even if they were only for 2-year-olds. The Champagne Stakes, a great example. That's a very important race because at one turn, at a mile, it gauges speed. What they try to have of the stallion is you want to have that really greasy, fast, like 1 mile type of speed. They can add stamina with the mare underneath. That's where you get the class, and that's how far the talent will be taken, is by the mare, generally. So, like horses like Vacoma, it's no surprise that he's a really good first-time starter side because he's so precocious. He had great speed, and that's what he translates to his offspring. So anyway, what my point is if you think about it, okay, at 2 years old, you can win stakes, so that's fine. Let's see how you do at 3. Now you're running only against 3-year-olds. That's important to remember. You're not running against older horses yet. You're only running against 3-year-olds. You may be very good as a 3-year-old. Disco Time, great example. Remember he won the Lecomte? A lot of us, I myself included, thought he was pretty damn good. Well, he took some time off. What happened at 4? Pegasus, not too good. He's been not nearly as good as 3-year-old as 4-year-old. Now This time in the thoroughbred season, now that the Triple Crown's over, you're going to start seeing the 3-year-olds run against older horses. That's a big determinant in their value. If they can compete against older horses, and that's another way that their value increases. So trainer intent, a lot of it, most of it, that's what it has to do with. It is now there's tune-up races. We all know that. Bill Mott, second off the layoff for years. He's not putting the horse in necessarily to win. He's in that race to get ready for the next race. If you've got a horse like Sovereignty, for instance, if he had started his year in an optional claimer for 80,000 or whatever, well, is that a race that he's in because he really wants to win an optional claimer for 80,000? No, it's a prep race for the next one that he's pointing to. There's another aspect of trainer intent. So when you know that, and I love it. Let me tell you, I love seeing those races when stakes winners go into an optional claimer to start their year. I bet against them all day long because they're not in it. They're not necessarily tuned up to win it. It's a stepping stone for the race that they really want to win. Trainer intent. Okay? So that's another aspect of it that doesn't necessarily tie into value, except in the aspect of it's getting him ready to win a race that will increase its value. I hope that all makes sense. Because if you can understand that concept, it's going to change how you look at races. How about this? Yeah, right, Sean. They are. They're great betting races because you can bet against those favorites because they're not in it for that. They're in it for another race. Here's another thing about trainer intent. A horse was pretty good at 3, but as far as the division, he wasn't the best sprinter. He wasn't the best miler. He wasn't the best router. Any one of those aspects of the 3-year-old class, he was kind of okay. So we see him all of a sudden, he's on turf. Why is he on turf? He's been running on dirt his whole career. They're trying to find a place for him. Now, Burnham Square is a really exaggerated example of that. Burnham Square was a nice 3-year-old on dirt. He was very competitive. He was a very good horse, but they moved him to turf. One of the primary reasons was to give him a niche, to give him a place. And also, he's awesome on turf. But that's why they moved him. Now, if he had won the Breeders' Cup Classic, you probably never would have seen him on turf, even though he's great at it. Secretariat, a great example, ran on dirt, right, his whole career. Why'd they put him on turf for the last couple? Increase his value. Say, hey, look, he can do it on turf too. There you go, Daniel. Good call. Tawny Port, deterministic. Exactly. Deterministic was pretty good on dirt, but was he one of the best 3-year-olds on dirt? No. So let's move him to turf and see what he can do. So it's all. So when you see a horse pop up, and you've heard me say this when we do our posts, and I see a horse who's never run on turf before, and all of a sudden he's on turf. They can't figure out what to do with him. He's got a history where he's a ham and egger. He can finish 3rd or 4th in every dirt race, but he can't win. And he's got some pretty good value. So what are we going to do? Let's see if he can do it on turf. Maybe he can find a niche. Tawny Port is an excellent example of that. A horse who can run all day, but on dirt, stamina is nice, but you need a little more than that, don't you? You need speed. He doesn't really have it, but he can run a long time. Turf's a perfect place for him. So, yeah, I'd like to see that too, Robert. I think that'll be a fun one for sure. So I hope if you can understand that concept and tie it into trainer intent, it's going to make a lot of sense to you. and you're going to be able to toss horses easier. And that's, to me, I've said it before, the most important thing is who you don't use as opposed to who you use. When you can eliminate horses based upon trainer intent, what's really obvious is that they're trying to unload a horse. I mean, don't you love it? Let's see. All right. What do you? I'm just checking your comment, Laura. Trainer intent. The concept is clear, but you have to know the trainers and how they operate. That's right. Great if you're betting on the big boys, but otherwise, no, Laura. You can always determine trainer intent. You can. It doesn't matter. Is it clearer with the big time guys? Yes. At stakes, if you think about it, at the stakes level, they're all pretty good, right? So it's easier to find vulnerability at the stakes level. Now, when you deal with claiming horses, they're all vulnerable, right? They got to run every 2 weeks to earn their feed. Claiming horses run every 2 weeks for a couple of reasons. Number one, to pay the bills. And number two, hopefully somebody will claim him, right? Now, when you can look at, there are great claiming trainers like Linda Rice or, all trainers have patterns. And if you study, there's only a couple that I know of that I can't figure out for the life of me. David Jacobson and Kenny McPeak are very difficult to figure out what they're doing. But all trainers have patterns if you pay attention to it enough. And when you discover you can figure out the training patterns, their trainer intent, makes life a lot easier. Then you can tell. You can say everything about this horse says go, 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 bet him to win. But if the trainer intent tells you he's, otherwise, you don't use him. You let other people use him because he's fool's gold, and you bet against him and you win, right? So that's, now let's see. Okay, what Joe says. I agree. A lot of races, I feel like I'm eliminating runners more than picking a winner. That's, sometimes, hey, those Royal Ascot races, the King Charles III, that was all about eliminating horses, not picking a winner. That, when you see the post, that horse, that's got 26 horses in it. And, it's about as wide open a race as you can get. It's going to be who gets the trip. I mean, it's a race. It's important that you find the ones that don't have any chance, and get rid of them. And some of them, they're the favorite in that race is 3-1, and I can't figure out why. So it's a really important concept. What I thought we would do is I wanted to get that out there, and because if you understand that, it's going to make life a lot easier for you. I promise you it will. You can ask yourself one question with every horse. Why is this horse in this race? And that'll start it. Now, you keep that in the back of your head when you look at the past performances. And what do I say about past performances? They tell, every horse tells a story. You have to think of it that way. The past performances tell you a story about the horse. Once you learn what the story is, then it's easier to put it all in perspective and all together. Okay, Laura says, for instance, can you tell me what the trainer intent for Power Shift was? My guess would be that he's a 3-year-old who showed promise. He just won his maiden. And based upon his pedigree, the race with emerging market, let's see what he's got. So the intent was, if they probably were looking, they have egos too. Don't forget, trainers do. And yes, Debbie, that's correct. Is he grade 1? Let's see what he's got. We're going to put him in a race that, in retrospect, if you think about the Belmont, it wasn't clear cut. This has not been a clear-cut year. So, hey, you know what? Maybe he can wire the field. Maybe he freaks on that day and he takes them all the way. Is it worth a shot? Why not? We could put him in that race, or we could put him in some grade 3, and where if he finishes third or fourth in the Belmont, the payday is bigger than if he won a grade 3. That's part of it too. You got to remember that. That's why you have these horses come in who, they have no chance to win, but they can suck up for fourth. They get a nice payday. And who do they serve? The owners. The owner's happy because he got a check, right? So that would be power shift that would be my guess what the intent was. And also, probably Todd Pletcher recognizing, well, there's not a lot of speed in this race. So because there isn't a lot of speed, he can be the speed, and he might be able to take them all the way. That's right, Daniel. Give you a great example of that. Kenny McPeak. Kenny McPeak loves to talk up his horses. I mean, sometimes they win, but it always seems to me conditional, like the conditions are all just right for them to win. You never see him with a front runner who can just blow the field away. You rarely see him with a stalker like Mystic Dan. Once in a while, he gets one like that. But what do they all seem to do? They come from the clouds, right? I think he overrates his horses. My personal opinion. He's had a lot of success. He's a good trainer. I'm not saying he isn't. But they all seem to do the same thing. They all seem to come from the clouds. And, he was on record as saying he thought Universe was a Derby winner. Come on. So they're human. That's important to know that. I was thinking about McPeak and this year, Chad Brown. Chad Brown may have fallen prey. It's the owners too. Don't forget, the owners own the horses. If he says put him in the Belmont, he's going in the Belmont. That's the way it works. I think also, don't forget too, these guys never leave the street. They know what their competition is. Alan Jerkins was a master at that. He was not good on the national stage, but he beat Secretariat twice because he knew. He pays attention. He knew there was a time you could beat him. On the New York circuit, he played for the New York circuit. So he looked at his competition, and he was always trying to beat his competition in New York. Some of these guys do it on the national stage, but my point is that, these guys knew. They look at the 3-year-olds and, this year, and they probably like, hey, they're not that good. So why not put my horse in a race? He's got just as good a shot as a lot of them do, and he doesn't get the publicity. Why not? We'll take a shot. Nick Zito's a master at that. You never wanted Nick Zito when he had the favorite. You wanted him when he was 10 and 15 to 1. He'd beat your brains out all day. And how do they do that? They watch for vulnerability just like you and me. And when they see it, they attack it. And that's how you have upsets happen, So it's all about, that's trainer intent. Where can the horse win? Are the conditions ripe that he can win? Am I catching somebody? It might have been Sean. Could have very well been. He didn't have his Derby horse, so he said, well, I'll just see if I can get another one. That could very well be. That's right, Laura. It is important to know the trainer patterns. It's extremely important. And this is how you do it. You watch races. Why are these horses in this race? What's the purpose of putting him in this race? Now, here's a great example of trainer intent that's incredibly obvious that sometimes a lot of people miss. At Saratoga, or any track, when you see Todd Pletcher or one of these big trainers, not so much Steve Asmussen, because he plays the claiming game a lot, but these guys are on the national stage, right? Bob Baffert, Chad Brown, Todd Pletcher. Brad Cox, when you see one of these horse trainers put a horse in a claiming race, what should that tell you? They can't run. They have stakes winners. That's what they train. They train for Derby winners for win major stakes races. That's what their stable is totally geared to. So when they put so when they put a horse in a claiming race, that should be a major league red flag to you right away. It's not, he's not there because necessarily he can win. They do win those races, but he's there why? They want to get rid of him. It's a fire sale. Please take this horse off my hands. He's no good. And then the other thing they do, and you really know that's why he's in the race, when they put a top jockey on him. Now that may seem counterintuitive, but what are they doing when they put like Johnny Velasquez on a claiming horse? Why do they do that? To dress the horse up and make him look more attractive. Hey, put Johnny Velasquez. He must think he can win today. He must be pretty good. What a steal! We can get him for $50,000. And Todd Pletcher's thinking to himself, "You be my guest. You can have him." People miss that all the time. They overbet the big trainers just because of the big trainers in races their horses don't belong or aren't meant to be in. I hope that is a monster angle that if I see a big time trainer with other than Steve Asmussen, Cherie DeVoe. Cherie DeVoe has a horse in a claiming race. That's not what her stable's all about. Her stable's about stakes winners. She's having a fire sale. At Churchill Downs in the fall meet, I love it because when Todd Pletcher brings his horses down there, most of them need work. The good ones, they're out to pasture or they're gearing up for the Pegasus or whatever. Why are they running in the fall meet at Churchill? Other than maybe the stakes races. They need work. So when you see them up for a claiming price, he's trying to get rid of that horse. I bet against him all day long on that meet because his horses are there because they need a little polish. They need to try something different, or they're gearing up for another race. And then if they're in a claiming race and he puts a Rad Ortiz on them, he's begging you to take that horse. So that's another angle of trainer intent. So I hope that one makes sense to you. Linda Rice is great off the claim. So's Ilke Cantamasi. And you know why these guys are good? I'll tell you something else I learned from John Stetton that makes complete sense. He used to own horses. One of the reasons horses do really well off the claim, especially when they go to a bigger barn, they eat better. They get better feed. If they're not eating junk or the trainer is small time and he can't feed them the really good stuff, he gets to a big barn, they let him eat, let him nourish, put on muscle, boom. Seems like a different horse first off the claim. So that's the thing, trainer intent. I mean, that's a big one. First off the claim, they're going to be pretty good. That's right, Laura. Yeah, I mean, I remember Sweet Northern Saint was the Derby favorite in 2006, and I think by the end of the year he was running in claiming races. I couldn't believe it. I was like, he just, they don't progress, and they've reached, again, the height of their value, and he was a gelding, I believe. What else are you going to do with him? If he's a gelding and he can't compete against older horses in stakes races, what else can you do? You got to put him on the claiming ranks, because now they're just saying, please take him because he's done as much for us as he can do. When horses run in the claiming ranks, that means they've reached the height of their potential. They just can't go any farther. Sometimes they do. Lava Man was a $50,000 claimer that turned into a really good stakes winning California horse. Couldn't win anywhere else, but he could win in California. And he won all the big stakes races out there. It happens. They mature late. There's lots of things. But so I hope this is the most important concept. I want to get this one right up front about looking at horses and asking yourself, why is he in this race? And if you take that coupled with what I talked about it all being about the value of the horse, then trainer intent and looking and seeing why these horses are in particular races is going to make a lot of sense to you. It'll blow you away. You all of a sudden you'll be like, oh wow, now I know why he's there. And then here's one out of nowhere that's a really interesting concept. If you can't figure out why the horse is in the race, he's probably got a pretty good chance of winning. Because if nobody can figure out why he's there, it only can mean one thing. He must be in dynamite form. Sometimes that happens. It's just the intent is he's running really well, so we put him in the race, even though it doesn't seem like he belongs, because they saw vulnerability that perhaps we didn't see. These guys watch. They watch their competition. They know who's vulnerable. They know who's susceptible to what. Where can we beat them and when? They know that. And that's about trainer intent. So when you see unusual anomalies with horses being entered race, sometimes it's just because he's in really good form and the others aren't. So, do we have any questions about trainer intent? What I'm gonna do is go to a race, and we're just gonna look at the horses, and I'll try to show you some different things about trainer intent. But before we do that, do we have any questions? Stella Artois. There's plenty of horses who've done. Hey, listen, there was a horse years ago. There were a couple of them in the 2000s. There were like 5 horses who were all like 6, 7, 8, 9. Evening Attire raced till he was 10. Perfect Drift raced till he was 10, and they picked up a check in graded stakes like clockwork. You could write them down for third in every race. They were the easiest trifectas you'll ever have. Couldn't win. Dynaver was another one. He finished second. They used to make him the lowest price favorite, and he finished second or third every single time. So you could bet against him. He wasn't going to win. But there are a lot of horses who run long and who can stay competitive. And it just so happens this has been the year of the 7-year-old. There's been a lot of them this year. Okay, let's see. Okay, Debbie asks, how much pressure do owners put on trainers to enter? Quite a bit. Some owners are, listen, owners are people, right? You have some who are extremely patient. Shug McGahee had the Phipps for years. Still does, I guess, but they understood the game. They didn't have to win now. They knew you needed to take time and nurture a horse sometimes. So they never said, let him do what he wants to do. Shug knows what he's doing. So Shug would bring him along slowly, gradually. And you really wanted to pay attention when he had a horse who won early or was really precocious, like Easy Goer, because that's not his style. When they do that, then you're like, whoa, he's pretty good. There are other owners, like I'm convinced I can't, Mike Napoli has done a lot of good things for horse racing. And on the whole, I think he's positive. He's a little brash. A lot of people don't like him. I think he's an owner sometimes who gets Derby fever. And every time a horse wins a maiden, he's like, Todd, put him in a stakes race. A lot of them aren't ready. There are owners who just are totally irrational. They think their horse is a Derby winner and they demand he's put into a race that he's not ready for. And the trainer will be like, listen, he's not ready yet. And they talk till they're blue in the face. And the guy says, no, all my family's coming in from out of town. I want this horse in a grade 1 stakes race when he was running in claimers. It happens. Owners can be very unreasonable. But after a while, if a trainer has a good track record, you'd like to think that they'd be like, hey, I guess this guy knows what he's doing. Well, even then, every trainer has assholes for owners. Some of them are. Some of them are really good. Jerry Moss, for years had Dick Mandela. He's a great owner. He understood, what the game was all about, and those are guys you dream to have as an owner. And then there's the new money guys. Generally, they can be a handful because they're unrealistic in their expectations, and they look at it as an extension of themselves, how the horse does, if that makes sense. So let's see. So yes, there's a lot of pressure on. There's a lot of pressure. It's not just the trainer intent; it has to be the owner. Well, that's right, and that's another thing you do. Why is this horse in a race when Bill Mott would never do that? Chances are it's the owner's decision. Could have been with emerging market. You don't know. Seth Klarman could say, "I want to run him in the Derby." Peter, the Growth Equity had the more traditional route, right? He took the Peter Pan to the Belmont. You don't know. Okay, now let's see. Father Sean asks, what about trainers reclaiming horses they had before? Is it that they really like the horse or wanted to keep getting value at the level? Chances are when they reclaim a horse, it's because they know he can compete at that level effectively. When you see that's a great angle. Trainers claiming horses back. Great angle. Because you know what happens? Some of these trainers don't know what they're doing. They don't. I mean, people don't believe that. Some of them really don't know what they're doing. And the sharp trainers out there, like Bobby Frankel was the king of the claimers, they know that. And they'll watch and they'll see he's not getting the most out of this horse. If I get him, I'll stretch him out. He's running in sprints. He's probably better at roots. Maybe he's better on the grass. They watch their competition. So when they claim a horse back, it's not by accident. I will also say that sometimes trainers are irresponsible in their claims. They claim horses they shouldn't. I've seen that. Steve Ashman did he's made claims. I'm like, why the hell did he claim this horse? And he put him right back up for a claim at a lower level to get rid of him. That's another great sign. When you see a horse who runs at the let's say the 50,000 level. He runs one race, trainer claims him, runs one race first off the claim, bombs out at either 50,000 or a higher level, and then the next race he's down to 20,000. What's that tell you? Trying to get rid of him. Don't want him, gone. So you bet against him because that horse can't run. Or, it may be at the only place he can win. But it's enough that he's probably kind of vulnerable. So you have to think about that. He may just not be in good form. He may be cutting down the size of his barn. He's got too many horses. His owner went broke and says, put them all up for sale. You don't know. It's all kinds of stuff that happens. Let's see. Rapoli is a great example we have to think of there. That's right. Debbie, that's exactly right. Yes. Owners... Yeah, there were some owners who aren't going to listen. They're not going to listen. They're going to do it their way because that's the way they made it. So they think they know everything. There are owners like that. You've probably worked. Some of you guys have had bosses like that. Okay. He is enthusiastic, Laura. He's good for the game. He's got a lot of good ideas too. It's just he's misunderstood. And I wish he would just find a way to be a little more diplomatic, but that's not his style. Daniel says, what is surprising to me in claimers, sometimes a claimer wins 4 or 5 in a row and nobody claims them. That's true. There's a lot of reasons they won't claim a horse. That maybe one particular trainer knows how to get the most out of them, the others don't. Maybe he's got some kind of issue. They think they're just waiting for the other shoe to drop on, or I don't know. It's weird. It doesn't make any sense, but it does. It's hard to know. Bill Mott caters. That's surprising. They all do. He has very good owners, and he has the reputation of doing what's best for the horse. He's not going to have a new money guy who's going to disagree, who's going to countermand him. He won't. He doesn't have to at this point. He can have whoever he wants as an owner. He's made enough money, and you know. But if one of his more prominent owners, if there's a decision to make about which race to run in, and the owner says, "I want him to run in a Grade 1," and Bill Mott wants to run in a Grade 2, he's going to run in the Grade 1. But I don't think that happens very much with him. He's too well respected. No, why would you ever disagree with Bill Mott? Why would you not listen to him? That's the way I look at it. Okay, let's see. Laura says, you can get the short end playing the claim game, though. You can. They have to run them too high to avoid the claim back. I don't know. I mean, the claiming game is really weird. Sometimes they drop horse. Sometimes trainers will drop a horse to give the impression that he can't run to get an easy payday. They can do that too. It's knowing the trainers and what their patterns are that that takes persistence and just consistently watching. And I will say this, DRF Formulator is great in that you can filter for different angles and see what trainers are really good at and what they're not good at. And that makes, whenever you're in doubt, look at what the trainer's percentages are. And that's a good way to tell intent as well. Okay, let's see. Alex, I like their different personalities, i.e. the trainers make it interesting. Baffert, different. Yes, they do. Of course they do. Of course they do. Bob Baffert is just, when you got white hair at 30 years old, you're going to be colorful, right? What else is he going to do? Put the sunglasses on, stick out. Wayne Lucas, always dressed to the nines, first class, everything. It creates an impression and people are drawn to it. How would you figure out that sneaky intent? It's hard. It's not easy. It's really looking at the whole, the race on the whole, and you just got to put all the pieces together. And if something doesn't seem right, there's probably a good reason for it. And like I said, if you see a horse in a race, you go, "What's he doing here?" It makes no sense. Well, there may be a very good reason he's there. He's just really in good form, and they think they can win. It's going to take you a little while, Laura, to figure this stuff out, to really become second nature to you. And once you do, you're gonna be great. But it's just going to take a little while. It's just staying with it, and just keep asking yourself that question: why is this horse in this race? That'll make it. It's really going to make a difference for you. I promise you. Okay, Sean says, also drop them in class to give them a better spot to win and give them confidence. That's right. If they're not doing well, that's exactly right. Yeah, we just saw it, right? With program trading. Why was he in an ungraded stakes? That horse has been running in Grade 1 races just about his whole career. Confidence builder. Get him winning again. Get him to feel good. They are animals, but there are things like that do help. And because, if you think about it, if they keep doing the same thing over and over again and not getting results, what happens? They get frustrated. If a horse is, he's a dirt horse and they keep putting him on turf over and over again and he doesn't like it, he's performance diminishing returns, right? So put him in a place where it builds his confidence. Okay, let's see. Daniel, educate me. This is going to take a drink. I can see that. Okay. Everybody goes on and on about the great Bill Mott. Other than Sovereignty, what great horses has he trained? How about Cigar? 30 years ago, 16 consecutive wins. 16. Now you think about that a minute. How do you know what it takes to keep a horse in good form for 16 straight wins? That ought to give you a really good example of how good that guy is. What is other good horses? There's a million of them. How about Elite Power, Breeders' Cup Sprint Champion? How about Warlike Goddess, Breeders' Cup Turf Champion? There's a million of them. And here's my point: dirt, turf, roots, sprints. He does it all. He's had champions at every level. He's had tons of good horses. Look it up. I mean, there's a million I'm leaving out. He just had, look, all right, look at Scylla last year, who won the Breeders' Cup Distaff. That horse showed a lot of promise, won a lot of races, but reached a point where he couldn't get her over the hump. She would have gone on the Breeders' Cup, and I didn't bet her that day because they said, she just seems like she's plateaued. So what does he do? He put her on the lead, and she wired the field. He retrained the horse. I mean, the guy's a Hall of Famer. I'm sorry. I hope now you're a fan. You ought to be, because with Saratoga coming up, you better be a Pilmont fan, because I'll guarantee he's going to win a lot of races up there. How about Chief Wannabe? Yeah. Chief needs a lot of seasoning, Robert. Yes, he does. Okay, well, good for you, Daniel. Daniel had Scylla that day. Well, good for you, because that was a nice call. And I'll tell you, here's a great example of something I missed that I just told you about. I looked at that horse and wondered what she was doing in that race, and I should have known, because I was like, and there wasn't a lot of speed in that race. With a little extra thought, it would have made sense. Like, yeah, he's going to send that one to the lead, and she's going to be gone because nobody's going to catch her. What was she doing in the race? Hadn't done well, That's when those things happen. It was his only winner. Yeah, that's right, Debbie. That was his only winner. Belmont's never going to go out of the Breeders' Cup without at least one win. The year before, he had 3. The guy's awesome. I'm telling you. You watch him enough now he's a guy that has a very specific MO. He's very easy to figure out. But also remember, he only trains horses for stakes races, to win Breeders' Cup races. That is what his stable is designed to do. So when you see, because of that, he has very specific intent. You can tell he has very specific patterns. When you see, his horses are, he's always pointing to races, and he's very detail-oriented. He knows everything about his horses. He's always pointing to a race. And if you understand that, then you're going to know when he debuts a horse at 4 years old in an optional claimer, that's not what he's there for. He's there to tune up to run in the next start in a graded stakes race. Just little things like that. If he's got a horse in a claiming race, he wants to get rid of him. He's not there to win. He wants out. His stables for stakes race, stakes winners. Todd Pletcher, same thing. Chad Brown, same thing. They are not in the claiming business. Now, a trainer like Steve Askerson, he is. He's got a huge stable. He's got barns in seemingly every stable. He runs horses at Delta Downs, Lone Star Park. I mean, he's a claiming trainer and he's a stakes trainer. His intent is sometimes it's a little harder, but those big time guys are very easy. Bob Baffert, look at the work tabs. How many times we say that during the Derby Trail? You see those 6 furlong works where he's turning up the screws, that horse is ready to run. When you see maintenance works, he's probably not, or he's probably not at his best. There it is. Gave me Valentina. Yeah, that was a good one, wasn't it? Predictable. That's right, Laura. The big time trainers are very predictable. Very predictable. I'll give you another one. I'll give you one that I just came up with or I just discovered. Steve Asmussen loves winning the Risen Star. 2 years in a row. Magnitude, where did that come from? And then the very next year, Chip Honcho runs a monster. I'll never discount a Steve Asmussen horse in the Risen Star again. I don't care what they look like. I know they're going to run. There's a little one right there. Okay, let's see. I have always watched for Valine Farms horses in Louisiana. They always seem to finish in the money. Yeah. Maggie Moss. She and Michael Dubb in New York are prominent claiming trainers. They're in the claiming business. They claim and get rid of horses all the time. Every once in a while, they get a good one, a stakes winner. But, Robert Bone in California was another one. It's important to know the owners, too. And you can tell a lot by owners at meets like Saratoga. There's certain owners that are always at the top every year. Phil Bauer, when he goes to Saratoga, he goes loaded. He's a hard boot Kentucky guy, but when he's at Saratoga, you pay attention. There's smaller trainers like what's his name, Phil Antonacci. He always throws in a one or two at Saratoga. I pay very close attention to his. I got a couple of 30-1 shots out of him. But here's another thing about intent to think about. Would you say Todd Pletcher is more interested in winning races at the Churchill Downs Fall Meet or at Saratoga? He gears everything up for Saratoga. That's why he wins all those 2-year-old races. He saves his first-time starters for Saratoga, the really good ones. Trainers gear up for certain meets that are really important to them. Those Kentucky guys, Keeneland, they're gonna move. Everything they do is going to be geared to have a great meet at Keeneland. So when you know that, and you see them, or how about this? After they finish, Keeneland, and they go to their barn moves to another track. It might be a good time to get him if you know he's gearing everything up for Keeneland. They do that. You know what another thing is some trainers do? I remember there's Ron Ellis out in California. He gears up for the meets that the big-time trainers don't gear up for because that's where he makes his money. So when his barn's hot and the others aren't, he cleans up. See, when you understand what's important to a trainer, Chad Brown is always going to be geared up for Saratoga. Maybe before it, his horses maybe aren't quite so live because he's waiting for Saratoga. He's from Saratoga. It's important to him. The Kentucky guys like to win at Keeneland. Little thing about trainer intent. Maybe his stock isn't as geared up for this meet. That's something to think about too. Yeah, Gary West, big-time trainer Joe, the owner, rather. What if the breeders keep the horse? Good thing, right? Oh, if they're inbred, sure. Yeah. Give you a great example of that. Golden Tempo. The Phipps stable. The Phipps are all about, now, if you know this about, the Phipps are an old school breeding operation. They've been around for 100 years. And they were very prominent. They're not as prominent as they used to be. But I tell you this. They like to keep the mares to breed the stallions and then sell the yearlings. But if they keep a colt He's usually pretty good. Golden Tempo, great example. If they keep, Claiborne Farm kept Swale. He won the Kentucky Derby and the Belmont. It's a pretty good sign. When they're inbred, and they keep them, it can be a really good sign. That's right. Mike Denny, Kathleen O'Connell. Oh, Kathleen O'Connell, I love as a trainer. She's great on turf in particular. You talk about like under the radar trainers. Kathleen O'Connell is sneaky good. Not a lot of people know who she is, but she's very good down in Florida. Okay. So let's take a look at a past performance. Now, I promised Ernie, he asked me specifically, are we going to go through Brisnet, a little tutorial, and that's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you what I do on how I break down a race on Brisnet. Now, I know some of you use the racing form, and I understand. I'm hopeful to have somebody who uses the form to come on and maybe give you some things to know about that. But Laura, hey, it doesn't hurt. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you a past performance. I have not looked at it. And I'm just going to handicap one race. I'm going to show you some things to look for on the form. And hopefully this will help you. And it's not about me tooting my horn like, hey, I picked the winner here. I haven't seen this race. I don't even know what happened today. I'm just going to show you how I break down a race. Okay. So here we go. This is the first race at Churchill Downs today. So the first thing we want to do is look at the conditions. It's a mile and a 16th. It's a starter allowance. That's what that little S means. I think you all know that. Now, a starter allowance is generally the condition that horses run at after they broke a maiden claimer. The N1X is the next condition for a maiden special weight. So when you see a maiden special weight winner go into a starter allowance, there's a pretty good bet they might have a little bit of an edge. So that's just a little thing. It doesn't necessarily mean, but it's a little thing to pay attention to. For 3-year-olds, which have started for a claiming price of $50,000 or less, or which have broken their maiden in a maiden auction race, and which have never won a race other than maiden claiming or waiver claiming. This is for claimers. This is horses, most of which have come out of like a maiden or a maiden claiming race. That's starter allowance generally is. It's also one, I can tell you, this is the kind of race that a claiming horse they want to protect. They'll run in one of these races because then he won't get claimed. And he has, if he's running well, he's got a good shot. So now over to the right, you see the pars. These are very important. You see E1, E2, that's the first and second fraction, and then the final fraction is late. What that tells you is the level of pace generally horses who can win this race will run at. So when you see horses who exceed these pace numbers, it may be a pretty good sign they have a good chance. If you see they routinely run at pace slower than that, obviously, it's a step up for them. So maybe they're not as good. The final is obvious. That's the speed figure, the Brisnet speed figure. The par for this race is 89. So what that means is generally the horses in this race will run to an 89. So you always want to keep that. I always keep that in the back of my mind when I look at every horse. Now, if none of them run at that level, it doesn't matter, does it? So now we look at the configuration of the track. Now, this is something I bring up all the time, particularly, when there's weird configurations like the downhill sprints at Santa Anita, for instance. You see the start. Now, we know the start, there's going to be a little bit of time before they encounter the turn. Now, that's important because where you see that finish line, that's where the Florida Derby starts. You encounter it at 1.125 miles. You encounter a turn right away. So it's always important to take a look at the configuration. Keeneland has that short stretch, very important, and that's why speed horses have an edge, and they run at 1.116 miles at Keeneland, particularly in those 2-year-old races like East Avenue, who won yesterday. All right, so we got through the conditions. Now we're going to look at the race. And we see number 1 is Batia. And we see he's at 4-1, and he's a colt. He hasn't been gelded yet. So there's some hope. That tells you right off the bat they've got a little bit of hope that maybe with improvement, this horse could be a stallion. That's all. If he's still a colt, that's what it means. This is like you get around this time of year, you start seeing horses get gelded because they've pretty much given up on them. But now we look at his pedigree. Medaglia d'Oro, $75,000 stud fee. Why is that important? If he had gone at a sale for $300,000 and the stud fee was $75,000, might be a pretty good horse. If he went, but more importantly, if he sold for less than the stud fee, there's something wrong with his confirmation. So maybe he's not so good. Very important in claiming races when you see that. See a $300,000 horse running a $10,000 claimer, that should tell you right off the bat he's a bust. Okay, so now you see that prime power right past the pedigree. That's a number. I don't know how they calculate it, but Brisnet uses that. And what that tells you is just what it says. It's how good the horse is in comparison to everybody else. And in this case, Batia has the third best in a field of 6 prime power rating. We'll get to that towards the end. So now I look over and I know this horse costs $75,000, and I look, he's had 6 races, 1 win, 1/3, and he's only won $38,000. So he hasn't even justified the stud fee yet at 3 years old. That's not a good sign. It can mean, it's just a little thing that cheapens a horse when you see that. I look and I see he's never run at Churchill Downs before. I see this year he's had 5 starts and he's had a win and a third. And I also see in 2025 he raced at 2. That's important. It's always a good thing to see a horse who raced at 2, because it means he's got a little bit of foundation, maybe has an edge on those who didn't race at 2. I look over at the other column on fast track. He's got 2 starts and 1 win. Okay, that's not bad. And I see he won at the distance. At 1.116 he got his win, and it happened to be, you see, in his last race. Now I look at the connections, and I see Christopher Davis, who's a pretty good trainer, is then not having a good meet. He's 0 for 12 with 3 seconds at a third rather. So he's having a bad meet. Now, when you see a trainer's having a bad meet, that means his barn is in a slump. That's a good time to bet against him. Because when barns go bad, a lot of things can happen. A virus in the stable, a lot of things. The whole barn can go. Or they're all coming off peak performances at another meet. And that's what I mean about meets are different. You're paying attention to what meets trainers gear up for. So I know that. And I look at who's the jockey, the Biscuit, Adam Beskiza, and he's 2 for 55 in the meet. And I also know from last week he was 0 for 42. So he's having a bad meet. He's not doing very well. Walmack Farm, pretty good outfit. And we see the jockey-trainer combination the last 60 days. Chris Davis has used them 3 times, and they got 1 win, and 2 out of the 3 were in the money with a plus 493 ROI. So that's pretty good. They've been flying under the radar when they've got together a little bit. So I know that. Okay, so now just as a thing, at the distance, I want to look at the sire and the dam average winning distance. That's AWD. And I know Medaglia d'Oro, 1.116 isn't going to be a problem. And I see the dam is by Street Sense, 7.3 furlongs average winning distance, not going to be a problem. And I see the dam had 3 starters and 3 winners. So all of that tells me that this horse is fairly legitimate in this race. Now we look at the work tab. I don't care, or what I should say is, you start at the furthest work, the earliest work. Don't start at the top. Go all the way back to September 20th, because you want to see a pattern of training, because it will inform you as to if this horse didn't do well in some races. There may be some very good reasons. He may have had some missed training. So don't, a lot of people say, oh, they only concentrate on the most recent race and the most recent works. You don't. You want to see the whole picture of this horse. So I see Turfway. He trained at Turfway Park. Okay, synthetic trained on. And I see he had a 48-3. September 26th, 6 to 7 days later. You want to see that all the way along. That shows consistency. See, September 26th, 4 furlongs, 49-3. Breezing out of the gate. So that was kind of early on in this horse's career. So it's logical. When you start seeing multiple gate works, incidentally, for a maiden, that's a problem. That means he's having trouble getting out of the gate. You want to see like 1 or 2 before he races. But if you start seeing 3, 4, and 5 works out of the gate, it's an issue. Now I see there's a break in the training from this 26th of September to the 11th of October. Not good. You want to see every 7 days. And after a race, 2 weeks after the race, then you want to see every 7 days. So there was a gap there. Something might have happened. We don't know. But it didn't dissuade them from running the horse at Keeneland on the 23rd. You see that. And he didn't do very well. So that may have been a reason for it, because he had a gap in the training. So now you see they gave him a fair amount of time after that race, over a month. Goes back at Turfway again, the 6th, 13th, 20th, 27th, and then he had a race on the 7th. And he did a lot better because he had a consistent training pattern. They gave him a couple of weeks off, the 22nd, raced January, and then nothing until March. So they raced him without formalized works. That doesn't mean he's not training, because obviously he raced again in February. And then they gave him a work. And a lot of that may have to do with proximity. There's a lot of, but you just don't want to see interruptions on a work tab, because it means their training was interrupted, whether it be ran a fever, whatever it is. It's not good. So then we see after the February race, they worked him in March, and then they ran him again, and they took 2 weeks off, the 28th. Then they worked him on the 4th. So he had 2 works before the April 11th race, and nothing. Basically, they gave him 1 more maintenance work in May, and then he ran on May 19th at Indiana. Okay. So you look from the work tab, and he's hasn't had a work in a month since he broke his maiden. That's a red flag to me. That would say, okay, he hasn't worked. Something's wrong, or it's fishy, because these horses, they gotta work them to stay in condition. So I wonder about that. Now, here's the important part of handicapping that is often overlooked. Remember I told you guys, horses tell you a story. This is how they tell the story. You've got their whole biography right here, right in front of you, or at least 12 starts. So here's how you do. This is where you get that. Why is this horse in this race? This is how it's going to become apparent, really crystal clear to you. Sorry, need to refuel. Okay. Now we know from the work tab, the tab was a little spotty when he debuted at Keeneland. So we know that, right? So we look at this race, 7 furlongs, which is a tough distance for a first-time starter. And we look and it was now, you've heard me talk about this all the time, the race rating and the class rating. It was a maiden special weight at 110,000, so a pretty good sized purse. It's generally the field usually is pretty good. The race rating is 110. His class rating was 107. That means he ran a lousy race. He didn't even run to the level of his competition. If he had run a 110, that basically means he equaled what the field did. He just sort of ran around the track. Any class rating above 110, he ran better than that. And you see, the higher the class rating, the better the race he ran. So I'm sure that's clear to you. So we look at his running line and we see now the pace numbers E1, E2, 84, 81, and 57. He didn't have any bottom because we looked at the work tab and we see he wasn't in condition. So it's no surprise he ran poorly. Then we look at his comp, but you saw Tyler Gaffalione was aboard, so maybe they had some halfway decent intent. And then we look at the horses he ran against. Time for Music, pretty good horse. Maximum Effort, not bad. So it was a decent enough field, but it was more the issue he was out of shape, I would say. So they gave him a lot of time off. They let him turn 3. So in January, now he's running the Turfway on synthetic. And we look at the running lines and we see the pace 25, 49 and 3, 114, and a final time of 140. That's absolutely crawling. So it was a very slow race. And look at and they put him up for a tag. So there's your thing right there. When you see a horse after a long time off who hadn't run for a claiming tag before, all of a sudden is running for a tag, that tells you they've pretty much given up. Usually it does. Nobody claimed him, though. And why would they? Because he ran so poorly in his debut, right? And now he's coming off a layoff. So sometimes they can be sneaky about it and say, well, everybody's going to think we want to get rid of him. And so they won't claim him, when in fact, all we want to do is get him a lesser race so we can win. So that's a hard read, but it's so you know that race was not very good. And look at his pace line, 64, 63, 82. He was crawling as well. He didn't do much running at all, and he finished with an 82. So he got basically a suck up for 4th. And we look and we see one of the horses in the black type there in bold is going to Gary Owen, who's right next to him, ran in that race and finished 2nd. We look at the running and broke out, bumped inside, 3 to 5 path, 1/8. So he had a little bit of trouble. And you do note that he had a 59 in his first race. He had a 68 in his debut at 3. That's also always a good sign, and it generally means that he's going to be better. So I take from that race that, he's not really exciting me. And the fact that he wasn't competitive at a lower class, you wonder about. So now they move him back. They run a Turfway again, same distance, in a better race. They move him back up to the maiden special weight, and it's got the race rating of 110, which his debut did. And you see this time he runs a 111. So now he's pretty competitive because he's running at the class level and a little better. And you see the fractions were 24, 48, 114, and 140. Still the same end time as the last race, but the pace was quicker, and he ran a little better. So there's a little bit of encouragement there. And we say 3 to 4 path, brushed it at the 8th pole, mild rally. And that's what you get when you finish 5th. So now they move him again. They run him again at Turfway at the same mile distance. But look, it's a lower class of maiden special weight. You see that race rating of 108? This would be a race I would expect to see an improved performance. And we do. You see he finished 3rd. And we look at the fractions, were very much the same as the race before, but the end time was 2 seconds faster. And you see his running lines were 79, 76, and 91. So they kept him back as opposed to the race prior where he was up amongst the leaders a little bit more, and he had better kick at the end, which would make sense at Turfway. So he finished 3rd. So this is a horse who's making progress on synthetic. So now they move to Keeneland. The Turfway meet's over. Now they move to Keeneland. and they run him on turf, which makes sense because he was just on synthetic. Synthetic horses tend to run well on turf and vice versa. They've already run him on dirt, and it was disastrous to start. So then like, all right, well, let's try him on turf. What do we got to lose? And what do we see? Well, he doesn't really run as well as he did in the race prior, but he did okay. So the turf experiment, not necessarily, you know, he did run a pretty good race. He got a 111 and it was a 110. But you see, he had nothing in the tank at the end of the race. And who was his jockey? Irad, right? And so they maybe had some intent for him, or Irad was doing somebody a favor. I mean, this is the kind of horse that Irad rides all the time. And you see the public knew it too, because he still went off at 14-1. They've added Lasix for all these starts, and it's helped its speed figures maybe a little bit. But I think it's just naturally that this horse is progressing a little bit more, and he's growing into himself. So now they move to Indiana. Now, I'll say right off the bat, I love betting against horses who run in Indiana Grand before they go anywhere else. And the main reason is the stock isn't very good there, and they don't hold their form. So when I see a last start, I don't care how good it is at Indiana, I generally will toss the horse for the most part. Not systematically, but for the most part, I will. And I also know that moving from Keeneland to Indiana to Hoosier Downs, as we used to call it, well, that's a big drop off, isn't there? And look at the purse size from maiden at 110,000 to 32. The race rating is 108. So it's a lesser race than he had at Keeneland on the turf. And it's his first start on dirt. And we see the fractions 23, 46, 111. Pretty quick. End time is pretty good at 141. And he wins the race. Now, he gets a class rating of 112, which is his best to date. And he gets his second highest Brisnet number. So it agreed with him. But he wanted Indiana Grand, not Churchill Downs. Do I have some hope for this horse? Maybe. We'll see what the rest of the field looks like. But on the whole, I would say this is a horse that seems to be improving. But he's going against winners for the first time. And he's, so that's something you have to think about. So he's kind of a maybe horse. Okay. Is there anything unclear? Any questions after that? Going over that one horse. Right. Exactly, Debbie. That's an excellent point. When you see horses who stay at the same level and don't improve, what does that tell you? He's running at 110s, 108. They had to drop the race rating for him to get the win. And he really isn't showing that progression that you want to see. It was a pretty good effort. First time on dirt. Turf to dirt was a good angle there. But am I overly sold on this horse? Not really. But it's a 6-horse field, so 4-1, But anyway, oh, I see. Okay. Debbie asks, how do I guess what the race rating for the current race is? You can't. What I would say is the class level of the race is going to tell you some things. The quality of the field on the whole, you're just going to look at the horses, and you're going to be able to tell if this horse is stepping up in class or stepping down. That's pretty much it. You just want to know if a horse is running at a 110 race level consistently like this one is, and all of a sudden he moved into a grade 3 stakes, I'd be very alarmed. He probably doesn't belong. He may be there just to fill out the field. You don't know. It's more for looking at the past performances, Debbie, you'll never be able to tell what the race rating is. You know, but for your handicapping purposes to get to that race, it should tell you. You should be able to gauge whether he's stepping up in class, stepping down, or he's at the class level. But it does tell you what kind of competition he's been running against. Okay, Robert S., do you hold value in that prime power number? I do in one respect. When you have a horse who has 10 or more points higher than the rest of the field, he's a pretty good bet. He's going to destroy that field. It's just such it's a difference. It's really easy to go to the bank on that one. You'll see him. We'll get to the bottom, and I'm going to show you some other things to look at when it comes to power ratings. But yeah, they're also a great tool when you know the horse doesn't. It's based upon his prior race record, but if you sense some vulnerability, you can use it to. If other people take stock in it, you go the other way, you clean up when you bet against them. So, yeah, I think it's a valid number. Okay, any other questions? Give one more second. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next horse. I picked a small field because I know this is going to take a while, and just so you guys know. So now I'm going to move down to Gary Owen, and I see he's at 12-1. I see Summer Pauly is the jockey. She's okay, but not having a particularly good meet, and she's kind of a lower tier jockey. But I do know that with Ed Moger, they're 18% out of 17 starts. So they've had a fairly good success rate. I wouldn't go to Holly with that. I like to see it like 30% or better, where I'm like, oh, wow, he's showing a lot of trainer intent. He's got his A rider on this horse. So and Ed Moger owns a part of this horse, and he's having not a very good meet. He's 1 for 17. I look at the pedigree collected by City Zip and Incarnation Temple City, and I look at the average winning distances, 7 furlongs, 7.3. Should be okay at a mile and a 16th. He's never run at the distance before, and he's had 7 starts, a win, 3 seconds. And I also note, because Summer Pauly, I think, in this horse, he's getting a weight allowance of 4.5 pounds. So that's certainly going to inform my thinking. I'm going to okay, well, there's a natural edge. He's got less weight to carry. And I look at the running odds. I see he's 0 for 1 at Churchill. But of his 7 starts, he's run 3 on turf and 3 on all weather. And that's where he got his maiden win in 2 seconds. So this is not necessarily his preferred surface. And he's never run on it. So we don't, but his pedigree indicates he's probably going to be okay. So I have that right there, that he's doing something for the first time. He's running on dirt. And there's an old maxim from Harvey Pack that says, never bet on a horse who's doing something for the first time. Sometimes it has water, sometimes it doesn't. Now, we know Ed Moger, we look at the angles, and we see he's 9% roots. Okay. But second after the claim, he's at 20%. So I know that when I start looking at this horse's PPs, I know this is a favorable spot for Ed Moger. And the horse is at 12-1. So I'm interested because it's a favorable spot. The horse has dirt pedigree, and he's never run on it before. So there's a couple things I want to keep in mind when I look at this horse. Now I look at the work tab, and what do I see? This horse has started running in October of 2025 at 2 years old. So again, raced at 2. But I see the last or the earliest published work was December 13th. So they gave this horse quite a break from October to December. Something might have happened, you don't know, but they gave him a break. And we see from the 13th to the 23rd, that's 10 days. So now I'm a little suspicious because just off the top, you want to see that 7 days at 7 days at a time with works. And we see they come back on the 29th. Now they take another break. You see races on January 7th. Pretty good effort at the maiden claiming level. Couple weeks off, back in training, the 22nd. Then they have another 10-day break, so that's another suspicion. And then another one after that, from the 3rd of February to the 13th of February. Then they give him one more on the 20th. So now he's got two decent works put together. And he runs on February 27th, and he finishes second. So he's got another second and a similar race to the one he ran in before. So he's not necessarily taking a move forward, but he's doing okay. So from there, they wheel him back kind of quick to March 14th, so they don't work him. And they give him another 2 weeks. Now they work him on the 28th, the 7th, the 14th. They run him on the 19th, step him up in class. Well, they run him on the 14th, and he breaks his maiden, I should say. And we note it was at a 110 race rating, higher than the previous two at the maiden special weight level. And he ran a 113. So he ran a very good race. And getting a little ahead of myself, I want to stay on the tab, but so we know now he's broken his maiden. So they give him a couple weeks off, and they put 1, 2, 3 works together, and then he runs on the 19th. First time against winners, not very good. All right, well, that's a really bad sign. Because if you run first time against winners and you're competitive, well, that's a good sign, right? If you don't run well against winners, but you see, he was 66-1 in that race. It was a 112 race rating, so it was higher than anything he'd run at before. So maybe there weren't a lot of expectations. So I go, okay, it was a mile and 3/16 on the turf at Keeneland. I know Keeneland, the class level is always going to be better than a lot of other tracks. So I know all that. So now we go to the 28th. Now, here's what I talked about trainer intent. After that race, again, the starter allowance, a non-winners of 2 lifetime starter allowance. He's up the track. So what do? They put him up for the tag. That's now you're wondering that they may have lost hope in this horse. Okay, so we see that after the 28th, in the claiming race, he got a second. They dropped him in class, and he ran pretty much the same way he's run in all those races. For the most part, he got second. And then we see interspersed works. So now he's in racing mode. So they're just kind of maintaining it. And you see now we'll go to the running lines. And I'm going to try not to mash all this together, but it's important that you note how the horse is training from the work tab, because that'll inform you as to whether he's really ready to run or not. Obviously, you want to see consistent works, a pattern, 7 days at a time, boom, 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 boom. They call it a string of pearls. Because when you see that, then you know the horse is in good shape. So it doesn't necessarily mean he's going to run well enough to win, but it means he's going to run probably the best he can, is what it tells you. So now I want to look at the running lines, and this is where the story. We see he debuted at Churchill Downs on the turf at a mile. There was a 110 race rating. He ran a 111. Well, that's pretty good at first start. And we see it was a key race. Now, how do we know that? The horse who finished in third, 1,000 Sticks, is in italics there. He came back to win his next race. So that tells you the race was pretty good. And he did finish sixth, but it was only 3 1/4 lengths behind. So that's not bad. Stalked inside, no bid between. First start. Okay. So now we give him a little time off in January. Now we put him up for a tag after a long layoff, just like the one horse. That's a little concerning, but he finished second. And again, they may have used that technique. Nobody will claim him because they think we're trying to get rid of him. We just wanted to drop him in class. And he ran well. And he was the favorite. And he also got Lasix. So they give him a little more time off. They run in February. Now he's at the same maiden 50 level, and he runs second again. Not quite as good, and he was the short price again. So now what I look at when I see this horse is, okay, this is a chalk eater, right? I mean, this is a horse who can't win. He burns a lot of chalk. That after two starts like that, now I've got reservations about him. But hey, look what happens in his next race, second off the layoff at the same distance, and they moved him up to maiden special weight, took him back. You see the pace numbers there. He was running up amongst the boys. This time they took him back. So you see that 69 and 69.90, and it worked. He also had the hottest rider at Turfway, Walter Rodriguez, aboard him. And he was not quite the favorite. He's probably the second choice, but he won. So he's 4, 2-path, first, 3 wide, 3/16 up late. So that's encouraging because now he moved up in class and he ran a better race. So this is a horse on you're thinking at this point, well, he's heading the right direction. So now he goes to Keeneland, big step up in class level as far as, because it's Keeneland. And he's running in 1 mile and 3/16 on the turf, a different surface, longer distance, 48, 114, 139, 158. In a starter allowance, nobody really burning it on the front end. They took him back. You see that 76, 76, 82, kind of a one-pace type of race. And at a higher class level, and he runs 9th. Not very good. So now we have some concerns again. We thought he was getting it, but maybe he's just can't run at higher class levels, is what that tells me. So they put him on turf again at Churchill, and now they put him up for a tag. And now he's running against older. You see that 3 and up. Now he's running against older as well as winners. So now let's see how he does. And you see the pace of the race, 23, 47, and 2, 111, 141, a lot faster than the race at Keeneland. And you see they tried to put him up amongst the leaders again, and he did pretty well. He finished second. So that's encouraging. But we also have to note it was at a lower class level, and it was for a tag. So they have some concerns that, if we lose this horse, we're not bummed. And you see they did. They lost it to Eddie Keneally was the trainer. And you see he's a 20% trainer. I like Eddie Keneally as a trainer. So they lost him. They said, okay, good riddance. And now, here's a little thing that I hope you take from this that I see now. Never, ever, ever consider a horse who wins a race off the turf as a quality win. Okay? People do that all the time. Like, hey, look, he won off the turf. None of those horses want to run on the dirt, right? That's why it was on a turf to begin with. So discount that completely. It doesn't have the same weight as a win on the preferred surface or the right surface. And he also could be a mudder who loves it anyway. So they put him in a starter allowance after the claim. Now that's good because that means they wanted to protect him. So they see something there. And, he's shown flashes of being pretty good. And we see, once again, they raised him to the starter allowance level at that same 112 race rating and crash. He doesn't run a lick, and he's 36 lengths behind. Now, the thing I want to know is Ed Moger a good trainer first off the claim? And I would say the answer is no, because second off the claim, he's at 20%. So he probably did not protect, or he did protect the horse just to see what he had. And that would be my guess. Now, one thing you can say is that technically his first dirt effort, it was in the mud. So he's got some built-in excuses there. So this would be where I would expect Ed Moger's got this horse to where he can run well. Now, the question is, now we know the par of this race is 89 and the best he's ever run is 81, and that was on the turf. I still have some questions about this horse, but I do know that he's shown competitiveness in the past, and he's with a good trainer second off the claim. And I know his pedigree's pretty good for dirt. So at 12 to 1, it's not a horse I want to totally throw out. Any questions after that? Bug weight allowance on the 2 horse. That's right. Sloppy track, right, Debbie? I love the first dirt angle though. Sometimes, Debbie, sometimes, not always. Like the break. All right. Let's see. Daniel says, I bet on TVG, FanDuel. What online betting site do you think gives you the most information like the Racing Form does? I use Twin Spires. I like the fact they have free pass performances. That's kind of a nice little extra. You just click on PPs and you get the race. You get the card for free if you play it, and that's any card, not just Churchill Downs. I use my own. I've been doing this a long time, so I know what to look for. That's the way I look at it. So I wouldn't be a good source for you, Daniel, but I like Twin Spires. So getting back to the form, so we've had 2 horses in a row, and I would say that both of them, I have moderate interest in either of them. I haven't been able to toss them yet because I have to see the whole field. But just looking at them, there's things to like, there's things not to like. Now we come to the favorite, Getsamane. Now, he's an E8. When you guys know, when I do the race shape, when I do my presentations, that's what I do. I divvy them up by the running style. And I see E8, that means one thing. This horse is going to go to the lead, and it's going to be catch me if you can. I see Linda Rice is the owner as well as the trainer. I also know that Linda Rice comes down to Kentucky to claim horses to bring them back to New York. Now, I see she's 0 for 7, but I know Linda Rice, and I know that can change at any time. So I just know she's a good trainer. I also look at the angles here, and before I see anything else, I see first after the claim, 22%, because that's what she does. I also see drops off the claim, 35%. So there's 2 positives there, and I know and 20% at roots. So this is a very favorable scenario for Linda Rice. I look over, and I see Luis Saez is aboard. Great jockey, good on the lead, strong hands. He can get this horse home. Now I look over 0 for 1 at Churchill with a second. Okay, that's good. At the distance, first, second, and the third out of 4 starts. So the distance is okay. So everything looking right now, Nick's Go is the sire. But here's a little bit of a red flag. Keeneland September sale. Now that's one of the 2 prime sales are the Keeneland September sale and the Fasig-Tipton in August at Saratoga. When you see a horse was bought at one of those 2, there was some good intention there. He's probably a pretty good-looking horse. And they paid $425,000 for him on a $12,500 stud fee. So somebody thought a lot of this horse. That's a little Kaylee Shapiro angle, by the way. I won't take credit for it. When you see a stud fee like that at $12,500 and the horse goes for $400,000, he's probably pretty good. Little handicapping thing to think about. That's where the sale price can tell you a fair amount. Okay, so he's 0 for 1 at Churchill with a second. And I know, before I've looked at the form, I know that this is a claim from Linda Rice. She's first off the claim. And I know she dropped him in class, but protected him. running in a starter allowance. She's protecting this horse. Probably has some thought that he might be pretty good. Okay, so I know all that. Now I look at the work tab. Now this is because it's first off the claim. Here's a little thing to always want to think about when it comes to first after the claim that is often overlooked. When a horse gets trained, claimed rather, and goes from one barn to the next, everybody has different ways they train horses, right? In order for a trainer to get their method of training into a horse, I think it takes about a month for them to get their training into a horse. If you see a horse claimed first off the claim and then he runs back in like 2 weeks, he may just be in really good form. And that's why the trainer claimed him, because he's in really good form. But if he wasn't in good form and he was claimed, it's going to take a month before they get their training regimen into him. Little thing to think about when it comes to first after the claim. So now I look at the work tab, and I have the whole horse's biography here. I've got all 6 races, so that's always good. And I look November 28th, December 5th, December 12th, boom, boom, boom. Races on the 20th, finishes 5th, first time out of the box. 111 race rating, pretty good maiden, but ran a 110. First time start, no big deal. Now they stretch the horse out to a route, and I look and I see January 3rd, January 9th, 2 works, kept him in training, runs a 112 maiden, so a better class of maiden, and he runs a 113. So obviously 2 turns agrees with this horse. And you see, he didn't get the lead in either start, and that's important because he has an E8 racing designation, so we know that's the way he likes to run. And we see, who did he run against? Reagan's Honor and Ocelli. So a pretty good maiden race, no disgrace. And you see between 6 wide, improved. Okay, those are all good things. Here's why. He got carried 6 wide and still improved his position. I love seeing improved or ran on in the running lines, because that means they kept trying, if you will. A lot of times after you see where it says improved position, they run better in the next race. And guess what happened in this one? Goes to Oaklawn after the fairgrounds, runs at 1 1/16, same distance. Not quite as good a maiden, but boom, look at the purse size. It's 110. It's higher. And he runs a 114. So that's the 3rd straight race his class rating has improved. And he wins the race with Irad aboard. And Banksy's, we know, and Baby Vino just won yesterday, as we know, unfortunately for me, at Monmouth. And Banksy's has been like a career second at his horse. So it's a pretty good win, but he won. And he did it coming from off the pace with improved pace numbers to a degree. He closed very well. And here's something you can look at. You see his pace lines there, E1, E2, LP. Look at his late fraction from his debut, 78, 87, 93. Now, that's improving, but you also note his early numbers are going down. So they're keeping this horse further back at this point. And it seems to work. So now he goes to Keeneland and he runs in an optional claimer for $125,000 with a 114 race rating rather. And what does he do? He runs a 115 and he finishes 3rd in a race that's much tougher than anything he had run before. So that's another really good sign. Now you do look at the running lines and you see he was 2nd for most of the way and then faded back. Hey, understandable, big class jump, but encouraging. Okay, step slow, 4 to 3 path, left lead. So he, again, class level was high. He's probably getting tired because it was a tough race, but he did okay. He finished 3rd. It was a 5-horse field, but an encouraging race. So now we go to Keeneland again, and they put him up for a tag. Now that's a little interesting, and the only thing I can think of, I would say, is that at this point the owner said they were encouraged by the maiden win, so they stepped him way up in class, and he looked a little overmatched, even though he finished third in a 5-horse field. So they said, we paid $425,000 for this horse. If that's the best we're going to get, let's get rid of him. Cut our losses. So they put him up for a $50,000 claimer. Now, the race rating was 112, and the fractions were a little slower, but pretty much the same as the last race. And you see, they took him even further back, like they did in his maiden race, 74, 70, and 100 running lines, but he was able to control things from the front end. I'm sorry, I didn't see the running lines yet. He was on the front end. I ran a board, and he damn near pulled it off. And he got a higher Brisnet number. So they changed tactics, probably thinking because it was a claiming race and he was dropping in class, that they could just wire the field on talent. He was the short price favorite that day, and he almost did it. So there's some encouragement there. Now they're getting a feel for where this horse needs to run, what the class level is. And you see he was immediately claimed. And who was the trainer? Brad Cox. What did I tell you? When you see a horse go in a claiming race for Brad Cox, Todd Pletcher, and you have a big-time jockey on him, they're dressing him up, and that's kind of what they did, right? There's a great example of dressing a horse up to get him claimed, and that's exactly what they did. And it was Windstar Farm, a big-time outfit. They don't have time for claimers. That's what you know. If I had been betting that race, I would have bet against that horse all day long and would have been right because he didn't win. That's what I'm talking about dressing up a horse and trainer intent. And I hope that's really clear from that example. So I know this horse, he was claimed for $50,000. Somebody thinks they can do something with him, and it happened to be Joe Sharp, who's a very good trainer first off the claim. And what does he do? A really good sign. He steps him up in class to $80,000, but it's non-winners at 2 lifetime. But the claiming price is much higher. We look at the running lines, the race rating 112, and he runs a 114, runs a good race. It was at a 1-turn mile, so they cut him back to 1 turn, and you see the fractions were 23, a little slow, but 45 and 110, pretty good. And we see they put him on the lead again, and he just kind of ran out of gas at the end of the race. But it's encouraging because it was at a better class level, and this time he had Jose aboard him, and look what happened. They claimed him again. They dressed him up again, and he got claimed again, and this time for $80,000. So Joe Sharp just made his owners $30,000. Plus whatever the money was for second place. Hey, so that was a savvy investment. For one race, they got a decent amount out of him. So now Linda Rice claims him for $80,000. So she has some pretty good expectations. So I know all that, and I know it's now today was June 14th. So she had a little bit of a month. Had about a month to work her training in. Probably a pretty good bet. This horse is going to run well first off the claim. Put him in a starter allowance to protect him. That's also a good sign. And depending on how much speed is in this race, Churchill, you can win on the front end. It's a fair track. It all depends. So there's some positives here, but what's the negative? The negative is this horse gives up the lead. And we've seen that. You see 3 starts there where he's been in position to win races and he's backed up all 3. So that's a concern to me. Now, he may go to the lead again, but if we look at the whole field, if there's no speed, he'd be a pretty good bet. If there is other speed, maybe they'll take him back this time because we know from his maiden score that he can win from off the pace. So right now, Gethsemane looks pretty good, I would say. This is a horse I'm very interested in, given the scenario, and having Luis Saez aboard doesn't hurt. Any questions? Did everybody understand about the dressing up concept? You did. Good. Okay, Laura, that's good. And you see, they dressed him up twice. That was the interesting part of it. And a lot of times, what will happen is, they claim these horses. It can be, Debbie, you're right. But it's also, think of this, when a horse gets claimed multiple times, he must be pretty good. But in this instance, the fact that Brad Cox put him up for a claim, he was trying to thin out his barn. And he put IRAD on him to make sure, or to make him think that, hey, still have some interest, but in reality, he didn't. And then Joe Sharp did the exact same thing, but he got 80,000. To me, that's, Linda Rice is another one. She claims a lot of horses. She may be thinking this horse will be better in New York when she moves him up there. So that's part of it too. But that was just a prime example of dressing up a horse to get him claimed. So I hope that concept resonates, because that's a really important one. Okay. So now we'll move on to number 4, Paul's Recovery. And we see Linda Rice owns and trains this one too. So now we know she's got 2 out of the 6 in this race. So there's some control she can have. And look at this one. 310,000 at the Keeneland September sale, and the stud fee for Independence Fall was 7,500. Same angle, right? And we see by Constitution and Morning Line underneath. Whenever you see the average winning distances are light for a horse is good at 2 turns, it's only because they haven't had a lot of starters yet. And Independence Hall is still a young sire, so that's likely to go up. We see the dam, 3 starters, 3 winners, pretty good. Okay, so I know all that. I also know that Linda Rice from the last horse is really good first off the claim. And with a horse who won his maiden last out, she wins at 23%. So that's good. When horses, that's more to the horse's quality when they win first time against winners. So that's a good thing. And we know she's good at roots too. Manny Esquivel is 3 for 41. So I'm not encouraged by that, not showing a lot of intent here. But this one is 9-2. But he runs the same way Gethsemane does. So to me, my guess would be somebody is going to change their running style. I don't think they both go to the lead, right? So now I know that. Now I look at the work tab, and I see January 23rd, bullet. And incidentally, a bullet first out of 18 doesn't mean anything. You want to see bullets first out of like 60, 70, 80, 90. When you see a horse who has a bullet first out of like 105, you got something. Just a little thing. So I see the 23rd, the 30th, the 5th, the 14th, the 20th, the 26th, the 5th, 14th. This horse had a lot of works and then raced on the 21st. When you see a lot of works for a horse who hasn't raced yet, that's a good sign. You want to see like 10 or 12 works. You want to know that they've really been conditioning this horse. When you see a horse going for a first-time starter with 1 or 2 works, unless you know the trainer is really good with first-time starters, I would discount them because they're not in shape yet. There are trainers who, as we know, like their horses to run into shape. So just a little thing there. So had plenty of works. 21st debuts at 2 turns at a mile and a 16th in a 1:11 maiden race and doesn't run very well. Finishes 13 lengths back, but it was a key race because you see the horse who finished in second came back to win his next start. Saved ground, no factor. First race, just a conditioner. So gives a couple weeks off, April 3rd, April 11th, April 17th, April 24th. Good, steady work pattern, and the times are halfway decent. So for the second start, again at a mile and a 16th at Oaklawn this time, 110 maiden race. So not as good as the one before, but runs a little better. And you see the pace fractions are about the same, but he ran a little better finishing. And that would make sense. This horse is getting a little more acclimated. Finishes fourth, a well beaten fourth. And who won the race? Baby Vino. And Maximum Effort, Banksy's, that's a decent enough. Made tight start, checked at the half-mile point, so had some excuses, and still kept on for fourth, albeit a beaten one. So a little bit of progress. So this horse isn't really focused. So what do? They put blinkers on him for the next start. But what's the red flag? They put him up for a tag for $50,000. They basically said, we paid $310,000 for this horse, and he's not progressing the way we want, so we're going to get rid of him. Fern Circle Stables may be very impatient or dream big racing, and they just decide we're just not going to stay on with this horse, so put him up for a tag. And he runs in the slop at Churchill, and he wins. And he wins on the front end, wire to wire. Now, blinkers certainly made the difference, didn't they? Because he was much more focused. But it also was in the mud. And as I recall, Constitution is a pretty good mud sire. So the conditions were very favorable. The class was, they dropped him in class. The race rating dropped for the third straight race, and he ran better. That's a major league red flag to me, because they had to keep dropping him in order to get a maiden. That makes sense, right? And you see, he didn't get challenged on the front end at all. 75, 71, and had plenty in the tank left. 97 to finish, and he got his career high number. This is a horse I would bet against all the time. Claim from Kenny McPeak. Okay, another big trainer who doesn't have claimers. So he wanted to get rid of this horse, and he did. Linda Rice claimed him. She's had about a month to work with him, but also note, no works since the last race. This is a horse I would never bet. I would toss this horse immediately, even with the favorable stats for that reason. Is that clear? Does that make sense? Okay, let's see. Ernie says, my questions are all about reading the last page with the track bias, race summary, and the. Okay, we're going to get to that, Ernie, and that is very important. As long as you're following me, Daniel, I have not looked at the Ohio Derby yet. I will have a post for that probably tomorrow night. We're going to get to that, Ernie. I promise. Right after the next two runners, we will go over that thoroughly. Okay. Horse number 5. So Paul's Recovery so far is the only horse that I would just toss right off the bat. And at 9-2, he's an underlay. C. McGriff. Now, he's by August Dawn Farm. That's a pretty good outfit. I know that. That's Bill Parcells' outfit. I'm not sure. And I see Robert Medina trains, 13%, pretty good meat. And I see Tyler Gaffleone's aboard. So, and I see he's the 8-5 favorite. But I also know he's 0-3 at Churchill Downs with a second. But he's okay at the distance. He's won at a mile and 16, so that's okay. I look at his pedigree. He's by Tacitus. Not one of my favorites. He burned a lot of money for me. And Super Saver underneath. So distance is probably going to be okay. He was sold at the Ocala Breeders' Sale in March for $50,000, and the stud fee was $10,000. So again, a little bit of intent there and a little bit of promise. So I see all that, and I see at Roots 9%, Dirt Starts 11, not encouraging, nothing to give an advantage, but it doesn't mean I'm going to throw the horse out. So I look at the work tab, and I see his first race was on November 19th. So before that, he had 1, 2, 3, 4 works. I like to see more than that from a first-time starter, but sometimes it's enough. It depends on the field and a lot of other things. You see, he went off at 46-1. Robert Medina is probably not a great first-time starter trainer. I can't remember it specifically, and it was in the mud. And this horse has 2-turn pedigree at a sprint. Didn't run bad, but it was a 109 rated maiden race, so not the greatest. And he ran kind of evenly, but he did finish fourth at 46-1. If you had him in your super, you did all right. Step slow, 2-4 path between Willing. Now that's another name, another running line note that I love to see. Willing. Because that means he wants to win. So I like to see that going to the next race. So they gave him some time off from November to February, and they gave him 1, 2, 3, 4 works before his next race. I like to see 5, but 4 sometimes is enough. And you see, after the layup, they drop him to a maiden, but it's a maiden optional claimer, so he may have been protected, probably was. And he runs a really good race, runs a 114 class rating in a better rated race than his debut. So that's encouraging. And it's around 2 turns, which is, we know from his pedigree, he probably won it all along. We see that he took the lead and he faded late, had Abel Cedillo aboard him, pretty good jockey. And you see, it was a key race because he went and won his next start. So all in all, very encouraging. So it comes to the next race on March 14th, mile on the 16th. Another protects him again, but it's not quite as good a race. And he doesn't run as big as he did in the start prior. And you see by the speed figure, it was significantly lower, but he won the race. So the chances are the field wasn't very good. He was the even money favorite. So he got the win, but I'm like, okay, I'm not really encouraged by that. So now they move to Churchill Downs, and we see that prior to this race, he got 1, 2, 3 works, maintenance mode, and he runs in a starter allowance and a much better race at a 113 race rating than he'd ever had before, and he runs another 112. And he finishes 6th. It's a key race. You see Bourbon Flight, and the 3rd place finisher both came out to win. So that was a very good field. But he didn't do very well in it. So now we're getting a feel for what kind of class level this horse is at. Because that was kind of a barometer, stepping up to a really good field. And he didn't really respond, but he was only 3 3/4 lengths behind. So next they move him to Churchill. They stay at Churchill, and they run a 1-turn mile, which to me, for a horse who has 2-turn pedigree, I wonder about a little bit. But look, he has his best effort to date. It was a race rating of 111, so they dropped in. It was a drop in class. They ran around 1 turn. And the pace fractions were about what they were when he won his maiden. And he pretty much stayed up rated behind the leaders. And he had the lead in the stretch, and he lost it at the last minute, finished a pretty good second. But whenever you see a horse who loses the lead like that, and you see 4 wide bid, dueled, denied. So all in all, a pretty good effort. And what I've seen of the horses in this race so far, I would be most encouraged about C. McGriff. I think Gethsemane, because it's first off the claim for Linda Rice, looks a little better right now. But C. McGriff, I see some things here, and this is another starter allowance, and it doesn't look like the toughest of fields. He looks pretty good. So now we'll go to Hutchison. James Graham aboard for Keith DeSormo, Fairgrounds connections all day long. You see there, jockey trainer last 15 starts, 7%. That's 1 win. So not doing very well together. You see Keith DeSormo, 1 for 17, with a lot of thirds, seconds, and thirds. So that's, that's never a great thing, because it just. Now you see this one cost $42,000 at the Keeneland September sale by Tiz the Law. And you see the stud fee was $30,000. So they made $12,000 off of this horse, but I'm sure they're not overly They would have liked to win more. And we see he's another E. So we've got multiple E's in this race. Tis the Law, Pioneer the Now underneath. Distance is fine. 4 starters, 2 winners. No 2-year-old winners for the dam. So nothing real encouraging. And I see maiden winner last out. He's 14%. So that's, there's nothing. So right now I'm not seeing anything that gets me overly excited to be really interested in this horse. So I look at the work tab and I see his first start was in July of last year, and we have no works to show. So they gave him a long time off and then get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 works before his debut and in February. So the first start, he debuts at Colonial in July at 5.5 and, kind of runs a middle, an okay race for his first start. But again, it's his first start, and we'll forgive it. So now they gave him some works. They gave him all this time to grow, fill out. What happens? Comes off the bench, crash against 3-year-olds and up. So that's older horses as a 3-year-old. So you can give a little bit of an excuse, but it's not a good sign coming off the bench when they don't run well at all like that. So that now I'm like wondering about this horse big time. So now the second start at the fairgrounds. Now he's in an optional claimer maiden, and the race rating's 108. And what does he do? He runs right to it with a 108. So now we're kind of thinking this horse, even though it was a key race, General Graham and Editor both came back to win. We're wondering about this horse. So he goes to Keeneland, and between March and they get 1, 2, couple works in, just sort of maintenance, goes to Keeneland, runs in a better maiden race, but nothing better than what he had been running, and he runs another clunker. And it's another key race because Non-Conforming and Quarry both come back to win. So the one positive I get out of this horse, he's been running against good competition. The problem is he's not being competitive with it. So obviously they see this and they go, okay, we've had enough of this horse. Now the fact that they put him in for 20,000 and he costs 42 should tell you they really are interested in getting rid of this horse. Because now that they're willing to take a bath. But if he gets claimed for 20,000 and then the winner's share is whatever it is, it's not so bad. So that's anyway. So now they stretch him out. And that makes sense. Tis the Law, Pioneer the Now. This horse probably wanted 2 turns all along, runs at 1 1/8. But the problem is it's a 106 race rating. So they had to drop him way down in class. And he didn't run a class rating any better than what he had run before. And he won the race. Whoopee, right? This is a horse I would toss immediately for that. Because there's nothing positive about that at all. You have to drop a horse that far to win a maiden race, and then you do it with a class rating that's no better than what you would run before, even if you've run against good competition, that's an easy toss. I hope everybody sees that. So now, Ernie, we're going to get to the last page. So now I'm going to look back at the horse at the field real quick. I don't like the 6. I like the 5. I don't like the 4. And I like the 3. And the 2 is kind of interesting. And the 1 is kind of interesting. So looking at this field, I would probably put the 3 on top because of the front running style. And I'm also thinking because C. McGriff ran a really big race last time, and he's shown that when he's done that before, he's regressed, that a regression might be likely. So the 3 coming first off the claim for Linda Rice makes the most sense to me. So I would go 3 and 5 would be my primaries, and then I would use like the 1 and then 1 and the 2 underneath for exactas. So now here's the last page. Okay. Track bias stats. I do not just me personally, I don't pay a lot of attention to this, particularly for a track like Churchill, which tends to play very fair. But you see the meet at 8.5 furlongs, the speed bias is 76%. So horses up around the leaders win most of the races. And that's for the meet. And for the week, it was the same thing. So the track is running pretty much the same. You see the first call, second call, you see wire jobs. There were 29% of them went wire to wire out of 34 races. So that's pretty good too. So now we know that, and we couple that with liking Gethsemane the most for being a front runner. It looks pretty good. And then you see 47% are early speed. That's also really good. And you see the late speed and the stalkers aren't winning very much at all, 15 and 9%. So all in all, Gethsemane's looking pretty good based upon these numbers. That's pretty straightforward, isn't it? Okay. Now we're going to look at the race summary. Now this is where I look at the bottom here first, and then I go back up to race summary. If I don't pay a lot of attention to that. The bottom numbers are the ones that really, to me, mean the most. The first thing is, remember we talked about the prime power ratings? There you are. You see Gethsemane has the highest prime power rating. C. McGriff has the second highest. Then it's Batia, Paul's Recovery, Gary Owen, and Hutchison. So that's no surprise to us looking at the field. Shouldn't be. Okay? So now I want to look at, so now I know who the highest rated horses are. And sometimes it's, like I said, when you, the prime power rating, if a horse has the highest rating, but he's vulnerable, you bet against him. There's other, it's not, none of these are you take one number to Holly. You don't do that. Sometimes you do. It all depends. Well, I'm just saying, from the way we handicap the race, this looks pretty consistent. I think Paul's Recovery is a little high, but for the most part, and I like the fact that Gary Owen might be sneaky good here for underneath. So when I see a low prime power rating and I see other factors that maybe can put him in the mix, not necessarily to win, but to use underneath. So the next thing, once I look at that, I'm a class guy, as you guys know, the class ratings. That's what I look at. So the average class rating, this is the level of class, the class rating on average this horse has had for the last 3 races. So you see for Gethsemane, his average is 114.2. C. McGriff is 113. Makes perfect sense, right? They're the first and second choice, and then everybody else. And also note that Paul's Recovery and Hutchison, the horses we don't like at all, they're the lowest. Now, the current class rating is obviously what they've been running at most recently. And this is a really important one because this can tell you when you always want to have horses who have been running against better, and particularly in a race like this. And you see Gethsemane, number 1, McGriff, number 2, and then look at Gary Owen. Now, you see that? Now, if you just went by the prime power ratings, you might throw him out. But note, he's got a 112 current class rating, so he's been running better, but it's kind of under the radar. So this is where you can put a 12-1 horse underneath your try and get rid of horses like Paul's Recovery, who are 9-2, and you make a better ROI. So that's current class. Now you look at the next thing I like to look at is the early pace and late pace numbers. Because we know Gethsemane's probably going to be the speed of the speed, but the thing that's really cool is, for us, is Hutchison's the next level of speed. Well, I know he's not going to be around. And you see that by his late pace number of 67. That's for the last race. And you kind of use the early and late pace in comparison to the race summary up at the top here, their last 3 starts. And that kind of gives you a gauge. Is he running faster? Did he run faster than he wants to, or did he run slower than he wants to? And you couple that with the conditions of the race, and it kind of gives you a good idea if he'll do it again or he'll run better. Now, we do see with Gessamane that late pace number of 76 is a little troubling, but I also know that I think this is a lower class race based upon what I've seen before. I also know C. McGriff's not going to be up on his throat latch pestering him. I think Paul's Recovery won't be because Linda Rice owns both of them. So that leaves Hutchison, and I think Hutchison's a horse that Gessamane should have no trouble with. So I look at all those numbers, and particularly the 97 late pace rating. Well, Paul's Recovery walked in his maiden win, so obviously he had a lot left. So I don't pay that any attention. What's the next one? Bhatia and C. McGriff. There's chances are they're going to be there late. And you see Bhatia kind of runs one pace, 85 early, 84 late. That's the kind of running style that keeps you in the race, particularly at this level with six horses. So that's generally what I look at. And I haven't seen anything here to tell me I shouldn't bet Gessamane. So now, so I've gone through it. Ernie, I know, has got a bunch of questions. So let's see here. Training intent for this race. Sometimes. Okay, you're betting the 2. Okay. All right, let's see what I got. I got to back this up so I make sure. I know Ernie's got questions, so I want to make sure I get it. Okay. Okay, let's see. Which better, E6 or E8 or EP? All depends on the race, Paula. The higher the number after the letter indicates the more that's the way they run, if that makes any sense. If he's a 1, then he may run to the front, but doesn't necessarily need it. Trainer intent for this race. Okay, I am on the 5. Okay. Now, I'll just break from this for a second because I want to ask Laura why you're on the 5. Oh, you're on the. Oh, no. Never mind. I thought you said you were on the. I was thinking you were on the 6. Then I was going to, I don't know why. I get the 5, yeah, because you do. The 5 would be a fine bet for me because Gessamane has a history of giving it up on the front end. But the fact that the class is lighter here, that it's a more favorable condition and it's first off the pace for Linda Rice, I think that would make the difference, and that's why I would go with Gessamane. But the 5 is a good bet too. I'm just a little worried that he ran so big last time that he might regress. Okay, what does Ernie say? I didn't know how accurate the track bias would be anyway because it changes depending upon where they are in the meet. That's true. That's entirely true. I just like the fact that Churchill plays extremely fair. And yes, there are periods where the bias can change, but if you know for the most part, early speed has been running well at Churchill. I think that's favorable, especially for this race. Best race, last race for the 5 at this. Yeah, that's right, Laura. But as I said, the thing that bothers me is that he ran so big, and you look back on his career, and the last time he ran a big race, he regressed the next time out. And that number was a lot bigger. So that's why. By the way, I won this race today. Arnie, I don't know who. I don't. This is what I don't. I have not seen the result charts. I don't know anything about it. I'm just wanted to demonstrate how I would break a race down. Was I right? You got to tell me now. I want to know. Yeah, I do, Laura. This would be Laura's asking me if I watch replays. Yes, I do. 5-3. Okay. Well, you had the two right ones anyway. And I'm gonna guess. Gessamine gave it up on the because that's what he had a history of doing. 5-3. Okay. Yep. Okay. Well, we had it right, but we just in reverse. To answer your question, Laura, I do watch race replays. I want to do a separate show on that because that involves. What I want to. I want to do a separate show because I'd like to either get somebody who's really good on, or I will talk about how you watch a race. That's very important. A lot of people don't know how to watch a race. And if you learn how to do it, then you'd be amazed at what a difference it'll make. It's how you find overlays. Is spotting horses who had a tough trip or there were other reasons why they didn't do better and they have sneaky good form. You want to know how I got the Puma? That's it. Because in that race, in the race with the Sam F. Davis, he had all kinds of trouble in that race, but it was obvious that he had a ton of horse. When you see that, the next start is when you want to get him because if he gets a good trip, and remember they took him wide in the Tampa Derby to keep him out of trouble, and once they did, the magic happened. But when you know how to look for things like that, that's what makes a difference. And especially when you see running lines where you see like Willing, improved position, ran on, then you want to go back and watch the race and say, and that's going to tell you if sometimes the notes are wrong, and that's the coolest part is when you watch a race replay and you know the notes are wrong. So everybody's reading the wrong thing and you see it right. But we're going to do a whole show on that. We're going to do a whole show. I promise you, I will try to, it's hard to break it down, but there's little things you can look for that I think I can show you guys. So, long-winded way to answer your question, but I promise you'll get it. That is one half of my handicapping watching. Yeah, it's really important. Really important. For a bit race was 5-3-4-1. Okay. Okay. Race replays are very important. I remember when race replays just came about, and it was back in probably about 20 years ago. And they used to have at Saratoga the replay center because they were hard to find. You couldn't get them. They didn't. A lot of AWDs didn't offer them. Twin Spires does, and incidentally, for Royal Ascot, you can watch those English races and the Irish ones. And that's, you really need to. If you're playing Royal Ascot, you got to watch race replays. But we're going to do a whole show on that, I promise you. So was this informative? Did you guys get something out of this? That's I just want to make sure if you got some basic concepts, particularly about trainer and owner intent and ways to look at the race, and I want to make sure I get it was worth your time. Good. Okay. So just remember, horses are in it to determine, they're in races to, good, I'm glad you did, Debbie. Horses are in races to determine their value. Most important. And then always ask yourself with every single horse, when you start, after a while you won't have to, but when you start, it'll help. Why is this horse in this race? And sometimes the answer will surprise you, sometimes it won't. But if you can do you if you math if you it's a way to conceptualize, to look at the overall. A lot of times people just look at one horse individually and they forget to look at the overall. That's a way to really help you do that. And handicapping really became clear as a bell for me when I finally got that concept of just why do they run the races? And if you look at it, particularly at the stakes level, when you get up into those higher levels, it becomes even clearer what the intent is. And when you understand that, you can throw horses out. You say, hey, he's not supposed to be, he's not tuned up for a big race today because they're pointing for something else. Or they're looking for, and the converse of that is they're dropping him in class because this should be an easy payday for him. And if you see that on the running lines, if they dropped him in class and it was supposed to be an easy payday and he bombed out, well, that's going to tell you a lot too the next time you see him. And, so they're really good, they're really important concepts. And, I'm glad you guys got something out of this. Laura, I would tell you the DRF formulator is really good at those trainer angles. You don't have to keep a notebook. They're all right there. And after a while, when you use them all the time, certain trainers, like their patterns. And, you see the trainer percentages for Brad Cox, Todd Plett. They're always awesome, right? Because they can ship their horses all over the place for soft fields. So it's more important just to know it's Brad Cox, But where it becomes important is when you get like those middling trainers like Eddie Keneally or Bobby, who's the guy at Oakland, wins everything? Robertino Diodoro. Those middle trainers that it's not overly apparent. A lot of the Santa Anita guys, a lot of the California trainers, it's good to know some of those lesser ones. They got some really potent angles. Okay, let's see. What's up with this leaked vet info about shockwave treatments? Oh, yeah, I saw that too. To be quite honest with you, I was not familiar with TrackSmart. I intend to take a look into it a little bit. Trainers are cagey. They don't want anybody to know what's going on with their horses, and there's a good reason for it. It's very competitive. If they, it sucks for us, so we have to guesstimate a lot. But as I said, there's a lot you can come up with just by understanding what trainer intent is. And you don't even have to know about all this extra stuff. Hey, listen, Golden Tempo was supposed to have foot problems. Didn't stop him from winning the Belmont or the Derby. If they were, the way I look at it is there are certain trainers that I know they'll run their horse regardless of their condition. Wayne Potts is one of those guys. But most of these guys, there's too much at stake. They can't, that's why they scratch them so much. They can't run them. There's so much pressure on them. They can't run them that they're not at 100%. So Rusty Whittingham. Hi, Rusty. I haven't seen you before. Let's see what you say. Excellent point. Most miss this concept, hence some horrible favorites. The dress and drop still gets the public every single day. Yeah, it does. It does. It's amazing. It's just people go, oh, Pletcher Velasquez, go to the bank. And look, he's dropping in class. Well, there's a reason for that. Get rid of him. Now, I'll tell you, sometimes they still win just because, their raw talent is better than what they're running against, but they're an automatic bet against. But yeah, dressed up is a concept that is really, if you play claiming races, it's really important to know. Yeah, it can be. It can be. Um, another thing is like there's a trainer, Kevin Rice, and he's Linda Rice's, I think he's his cousin or his nephew, whatever. When that guy brings horses to Saratoga, pay attention. I don't care what kind of race it is, whether it's a claim, whatever it is. He brings them to be sold at Saratoga. I don't care what kind of race it is. You have Kevin Rice on your tickets. Because now, again, what's the intent? The intent is I bring my horses to Saratoga where the people have the money and I can sell them for better than I could if I was running at Presque Isle Downs, let's say. That's a little Saratoga angle that you'll make a lot of money if you know that. But yeah, the old dress and drop, like, yeah, I used to just call them, no, they're dressed up, but no, dress and drop, I like, yeah. Are we done? Do we have any other questions? Anything else? Anybody going to watch Royal Ascot? Right, Rusty. Well, I know a lot about Saratoga. There's guys who know more. I'll say that. There's two things about Saratoga to remember. Good for you, Laura. You're gonna have fun. Okay, Ernie. Hey, I hope this was helpful to you. I know you asked for it. I hope you got what you wanted. If you have any other questions or whatnot, you can always reach out to me directly. I'll be happy to answer them. Saratoga is, there's guys who've been playing it a long time and they know more than I do. But I will tell you, I think I've talked about it is a track of sires. I got that from John Stetton. Boy, is he right. Good, Ernie. I'm glad. Sweet dreams. That Spikestown, Mr. Prospector line, Spikestown Munnings into mischief. Like, when in doubt, go with the sire at Saratoga. I mean, there's just little things like that. The more you play it, the more little things you'll pick up. But I can't think of any off the top of my head. But that's Kevin Rice. No matter what his horse looks like, Okay, well, thank you, Rusty. I appreciate that. Listen, there's nothing. I want to say this. If you're more comfortable using the daily racing form, that is fine. There are guys who've been using the racing form for years before there were Beyer speed figures. And they're just used to using it, and they know how to interpret Beyer speed figures. I just like Brisnet better. The formulator is an outstanding tool. And like I said, if you want to bone up on trainers and learn about angles, all you got to do is take the formulator, take a race, look at a trainer, and then just play around with the formulator. Look at what he's good at. Is he good at first-time starters? Is he good at layoffs? Is he good at dropping horses in class? And then here's the really cool part of it. It's like we saw, like Linda Rice, for instance, 23% first off the claim, 20% at roots, and then like 22% dropping in class. What about all three of them together? It may be even better. And that's when you can, like, I remember I found a Bill Mott angle once. He was 57% in this particular scenario. I can't remember what it is, but I have in the past used formulator and Brisnet together. What I like, and this is the only reason I don't use the racing form, although I really like formulator a lot, is Beyer speed figures. Now, Laura, you know this because you've been reading Picking Winners. Beyer speed figures are based on the final time. It doesn't take pace into account. And you have to know what the track variant was that day, and you have to know what the buyer par number was in order for it all to come together. What I like about Brisnet, you get the pars, you get the pace numbers, you get all of that. And I tell you this, the Brisnet numbers are more consistent than the buyer numbers are. You can see a horse with like 100, like a 105 buyer, and he gets like a 98 Brisnet number. I'll take that Brisnet number every day. And yeah, Rusty, I mean, some guys, you can, like I said, I know guys who only use Thorograph. Thorograph is an outstanding tool. Outstanding. I use it generally for the Derby or for big races, but Thorograph is it takes a lot of variables into account, and those numbers are very honest. That's an excellent, excellent speed figure tool. If I was a speed figure guy, Thorograph would be my thing. Some people use the sheets, Ragozin numbers. They've been using them for years. Some people swear by them. That's fine. If it works for you, do it. I just don't. And the other thing about buyer speed figures I don't like is they change them all the time. You know, they give a number and then they come back a couple days later. You know what? Actually, we changed it. It was the first number. You know, most handicappers who've done this a long time come up with their own speed figures after a while, and he just published it. And it's brought a lot to the sport. I don't want to say it's not a bad thing. It's just I have other numbers I would rather rely on. But there are plenty of people who do just fine using buyers. And I don't want to discourage anybody from using them. I just know what works for me. I was a buyer guy when I started. I used the daily racing form. I've just found that, to me, Brisnet is more comprehensive. And for what I like to do, particularly when it comes to pace and things like that, the daily racing form has gotten better about that. They do have the Moss pace numbers, and I think they're pretty good. But I just like Brisnet. It's all together. It just works for me. So I will try to get somebody on who uses the daily racing form to maybe give you some insights. Well, I don't want to discount it because it's, it is a Bible. There's a lot of good things in the racing form. Formulator in particular, there's no better tool. You can keep notes. Laura, one thing about Formulator, you can keep notes on horses. So when they show up in a race later, your notes go with them. So you can have a whole page of notes you've taken on every race. Thorograph is, Laura, I will tell you, Thorograph, their website has a tutorial on how to use Thorograph. But what's the most important thing about Thorograph is the patterns. Is understand. Now, you guys see me do it with Brisnet with the class rating and the race rating patterns. If you have ascending on both, that's a horse you want to pay attention to. It's kind of similar to that. Like I always tell you guys, John Stetton is the master of Thorograph. He knows how to read those patterns and interpret them. It's an excellence. I know how to use it, but I wouldn't call myself an expert because I don't use it enough. There's plenty of products. Race Lens is one that a lot of people use. I just do it my way because that's the way I do it. But I don't, any way that works for you is just fine. And if it works for you, keep doing it. Buyer speed figures are for a particular race on a particular day for a particular distance. Doesn't necessarily translate to a different track. That's right. You know what the thing is, Rusty, is the pars. Is you can't. That was what they tried to do. Is it like so you could tell the difference between a $10,000 claimer at Belmont and one at Santa Anita, and it doesn't really accomplish the goal. I think Brisnets do. That's the other part of it. Is that's a really good point, actually. Let's see. Debbie says, I can't read the Thorograph maps or whatever they are called, but I like the raw number Just watch the pattern. Just look at the pattern. Those middle numbers, that's the easiest way to do it. Do I, another new one. John Francis. Hi, John. Welcome aboard. Haven't seen you before. I have not looked at the Ohio Derby yet. I will have a post out for that tomorrow. That I promise. I've been consumed with Royal Ascot, but the Thistledown card will get a thorough combing, and I will have that out for you. What about the bounce variable? Okay. Some people believe in bounces, some people don't. I know Andy Serling is very big on saying horses don't bounce. I disagree. They do. I've seen enough cases of it. When a horse runs an immeasurably bigger race than they've ever run before, almost all the time they fall back. And how much they recover from a bounce, well, that's hard to know. And you also got to watch the race replay too, because it may be trip assisted. They may have regressed because they had a really bad trip that they didn't have in the race before. Generally, I talk about this all the time. I hate betting. I won't bet a horse back if he had a dream trip and ran his best number ever, because everything went his way. I want the horse who runs a dream number when he's got trouble and he's got to work his way through traffic and everything's against him and he still runs his best number. That's a horse who's on his way. So bounce is you can see it in the thoroughgraph too. It's just, when you see a horse pointing to a race, that's another thing. That's what prompts a bounce. Give you an example, like Street Sense, when he won the Derby. Everybody was on him because he was a horse for the course at Churchill, and I love hard spun, so I bet him, but I got the exacta. But anyway, my point is, Street Sense was pointed for the Derby. Everybody knew it. Carl Nasker points horses to race, used to point horses to races, like Chad Brown does, like Bill Mott does. So I knew after the Derby, that was a peak effort. He was trained for a peak effort, and he ran a peak race, and he won the Derby. Did I bet him in the Preakness? No way. And he didn't win. Because I knew it was logical that he was going to not be at his best after he just ran the race he was pointed to. So when you can see those patterns, he's not. Crude Velocity. Didn't bet him in the Woody Stevens. Why? He ran a monster in the Pat Day Mile. I couldn't see him coming back to that. He had to come back. It was a hard-fought race. It was a tough race. He's not going to do that again the very next start. If he does, he's going to beat me. And it means he's a really special horse. So I feel like buyers always had preferences for tracks. Sending you numbers. Well, I'll tell you why they are, Joe. And there's some truth to that. I don't know if there's a preference per se, but I know there's two tracks where I question buyer speed figures. Santa Anita and Aqueduct. Now, we're not going to have to worry about Aqueduct anymore, but it just always seemed like the numbers at Aqueduct were always high. I can't tell you how many times I've seen a horse like Achilles of Troy in 2006 ran like a 115 buyer for 7 furlongs, and then he was up the track when they stretched him out. And he never ran back anything close to it. Santa Anita, the buyers are always higher because, first of all, it only measures the final time, right? And the final times are always going to be pretty fast at Santa Anita for one simple reason: no rain. The track is dry. They've done some things to make the track so it doesn't get so lickety split, because that's how they lost all those horses, because it was the track was so hard. That's why they work. California horses work all the time, even the claimers. They have to run on that surface. But it's because of the surface. It's because it's just inherently faster than it would be on an East Coast track that are deeper. That's another part of it. Let's see. Okay. Debbie, I've heard a double number of thorough is a good pattern, like the pattern of 6533 is a good. Can be, can be. John has this pattern he talked about when you see a horse run like a five, 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 five. The next start he's going to run a monster. I can't explain to you why that is. I just know. I think I got that with National Treasure in the Preakness. He had that pattern where he was sitting on a big one. I think it was either that or the Pegasus, one or the other. But I remember that specifically. Yeah, that's a pattern. So, Joe, that's where we're going to have to disagree. I'm not going to miss Aqueduct whatsoever. I went there for the Wood Memorial in 2007, and it was okay. You know, it was like, it's okay. Middling track was okay. I went for the Remsen last year. It's a dump now. I walk in the door. All I could smell was pot everywhere. It was not well kept. Depressing place. I couldn't. I would swing the wrecking ball myself. Hated it. How long has Starcraft been around? I don't know, Laura. To be honest, I don't know. We're running out. Running out of questions. We've been at it for nearly 3 hours. I hope you got something out of this today. Give it a couple minutes. Any more questions? I love that any winner was near the front coming out of the turn. Any winner was near the front coming out of the turn. Sad that she was a done. Yeah, I mean, I got to have some. I mean, listen, after you've been to Keeneland or Saratoga, standards are pretty high for what you want out of a track. Parks was equally almost as depressing as Aqueduct. But I'll tell you what, a track that I discovered last year that I really like is Monmouth. Monmouth's really nice. I like it a lot. I'm gonna probably go to the Haskell this year. I really like and the Long Branch restaurant. Boy, oh, did I get it? I get a great steak. Oh, you're very welcome, Joe. It's my pleasure. This um, as I've said before, my attempt in starting this is to give a little something back and maybe educate a little bit what I know. I don't know it all, but I know enough. Um, and if it can improve your handicap and make us all betters, um, then I've accomplished my goal. So I'm very happy when I hear that you guys are getting something out of it. So anyway, well, I think we're going to call it at this point. I want to thank you all. Okay, thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. Um, this was good. We're going to definitely until Saratoga. We're going to try to get as many other voices as I can get. I've got a couple of ideas, some people I want to reach out to, just to give you some real basics about how they go about handicapping. And like I say, I have my way. Other people have theirs, and my way may not resonate with you. Somebody else's might, but the point is we can all take a little something from everybody. Then it benefits all of us. So, and you guys provide plenty of good stuff for me too. I want to tell you that. So, um, Father Sean is gone, so I'll give you an FYI. Jesus wept in the garden. Get some money. Get some money. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, now I know how to pronounce it, so that's good. Okay. Well, anyway, guys, I'm going to call it. Thanks for coming by, and I enjoyed it. Next week, we will definitely have a special guest. I don't know who it'll be yet, and I'll definitely have a notice out so you'll know what to expect, and we'll have something that we an aspect of handicapping. Don't know which one yet, but you will definitely have notice about it. So, as I always say, that's it from here. I'll talk to you soon. And until then, be well.